Ian, didn't you hear the captain calling? Carter asked. I moved my gaze from the notes on my desk and looked in his direction. He was standing by the entrance to my room, hands on his hips. He looked furious and impatient. What's going on? I asked. We have an emergency. HQ wants to send us on a rescue mission. Rescue? Who? I raised my eyebrows. No idea, the briefing's already started. Come on, let's get to the control room. Before I could ask him anything else, he turned and went down the hallway. I arranged my notes neatly and exited my room. The corridor leading down echoed with my footsteps and Carter's own in the distance. The spaceship was big enough for me to still sometimes lose direction, but at least it was equipped with gravitational panels so we could get around more easily without floating and getting disoriented like in the early stages of the simulation. I turned right at the corner and saw Carter stopping in front of the control room door. He turned around and waited for me to get closer. Once I did, he pressed the big square button next to the door, which made it slide sideways. Immediately, we were hit by the sound of murmurs as our other crew members discussed something around the holographic map in the middle. Behind the crew was a row of control panels sitting in front of a huge pane of glass. I glanced at the dark space beyond the glass, filled with hundreds of stars in the distance, unreachable still to mankind. It often made me realize how insignificant we are, and how easily we can get swept away in an instant in this cold abyss, and no one would ever even know. I was shaken back to reality by Captain Adams' stern voice. Ian, late again. Sit down, he said. The crew consisted of 6 members altogether, and we had mandatory meetings every morning and evening to go through the list of inspections. So when Carter called me for an unexpected meeting at 5 p.m., I knew something must have gone terribly wrong. I sat down and waited for the captain to speak. He said, "Earlier today, there was an incident on board the ISS-14. We don't know what exactly happened, but supposedly there are casualties and Earth lost contact with them. HQ wants us to go there immediately and provide rescue to anyone alive."
But that place is pretty far away.
The team medic Riley said.
It'll take us at least a few hours to get there, and we're not rescue services.
Yeah, but there's no one closer to them than us. Now, I know that this is not our line of work, but it has to be us. We go there, look for any survivors, and go back home. Wait, what about the mining operation? James asked. HQ wants us to put it on hold. Right now, the priority is rescuing the ISS-14 crew and escorting them back home. Fine, I'll start the engine, Hank, the pilot, said. He stood up and went to the control panel with Carter, and the two of them pressed a series of buttons. Every crew member was trained to pilot the ship, but only Carter and Hank could do it outside of any emergency situations. The ship hummed to life, the floor under our feet slightly vibrating. The view outside started rotating to the right, making the stars dance across the window. When it stopped, it was impossible to tell which direction we were facing. However, the pilots somehow knew it from the radar, and we were able to determine which direction to move in. The ship started moving forward slowly, but gained speed gradually. It looked as if we were pinned in one spot, but I knew that with each second passed, we covered miles of the inhospitable vacuum of space. There, Hank leaned in his chair. We should be there in about 3 hours. Well, keep your eyes open, the captain said, and try to see if you can get in contact with him in the meantime. He stood up and left the room. I followed and went back to the crew quarters. I closed the shutters on my window and sat down on my bed. Although some of the crew members enjoyed the unique view from the windows in their rooms, I tended to avoid gazing outside, especially if I was left alone with my thoughts. Staring out into the endless nothingness out there for prolonged periods of time made me feel claustrophobic and trapped. I knew we were relatively close to home, but our planet was only visible as a tiny dot in the distance at any given time, with every other direction around us being infinite miles of empty space. For the first few days, I would glance through the windows towards the Earth every few hours, afraid that our ship would drift away and we'd lose sight of our planet, getting lost forever in the unforgiving cold dark, so unknown to men. I knew, of course, no such thing could really happen, but the nagging feeling wouldn't abate. After a while of sitting on my bed, I went to join Hank and Carter in the control room. The two of them were casually chatting by the control panel when they saw me join and offered me to join in on the conversation. So I was just telling Carter that the guys on the ISS-14 are probably just blackout drunk. Hank chuckled and craned his neck in my direction. "What do you think?" "I don't know. It's strange to just lose contact like that. They might have had a serious issue," I said. "Well, whatever the case, we'll find out soon. We're almost there. See that?" Carter said and pointed to the window. I squinted and realized that he was pointing at a dot in the distance. As minutes went by, the dot grew closer, and more prominent shapes gradually became apparent. It began to take the shape of a man-made flying object, and I recognized its disproportionately large wings as solar panels reflecting sunlight. "It's still there, and it seems still intact," Hank said. He leaned in and pressed a button on the control panel. As he held it like that, he said, "We can see them. Everybody, get down here." In a matter of minutes, everyone was in the control room, and the ISS-14 was a lot closer and bigger, displaying more and more visible details on the structure, like joints, pressurized modules, etc. Adams pressed a button on the control panel and said, "This is the US Collector 03. Does anyone copy?" He released the button and we waited in silence. Nothing but the humming of the ship was heard. Adams pressed the button and spoke again. "This is the US Collector 03. ISS-14. Do you copy?" No response. Adams sighed. "Well, I guess we're going in. Bring us in closer, Hank." "Ian." He looked at me. "Suit up." I gave him a silent nod of agreement and proceeded to the lockers. I donned my suit and put my helmet on. I double-checked if the thrusters on the boots were functioning, refilled the oxygen tank, and made sure everything was tightly secured. Once that was done, I proceeded down to the airlock. Riley was waiting in front and inspected my gear once more to make sure everything was safe.
"Alright, you're good to go,"
she said, giving me a pat on the shoulder. I pressed the button to open the airlock and stepped inside. In front of me was the second airlock door and a small round window, the final line of defense that separated me from a potentially painful demise. Riley pressed the button again and sealed the door behind me. I attached the safety cord to my suit and pulled down the lever on the left side of the wall. "Depressurizing airlock, stand by," a computerized voice announced. I glanced through the round window facing the interior of the ship and smiled at Riley. "I'll be back in a bit," I said encouragingly. "Airlock depressurized. Opening airlock. Ready." I pressed the button next to the second door. It opened with a hiss, and instantly, everything except my breathing went silent. The weight of my body was lifted, and I was floating mid-air. I used the thrusters to propel myself out of the airlock, and finally stepped into the vast, empty space. That initial moment felt nauseating at first, leaping out of the spaceship and expecting to see ground beneath you, but instead being met with an endless abyss which threatened to swallow you whole. The ISS-14 towered above me now, much larger up close than I suspected it to be. A silent behemoth which took up almost the entire view in front. The docking bay was right in front of me, so I proceeded there as quickly as the thrusters would allow me. Despite being able to go only 8 miles per hour, I didn't worry about the speed, since I had enough oxygen to go for at least 6 hours, so hopefully I'd be back to the ship by then.
Ian, do you copy?
Carter's voice came through the radio.
Yep, loud and clear,
I responded.
Alright, listen, we scanned the area with thermals, and there's no sign of anyone being alive on board the station. What? Are you sure? Maybe the device malfunctioned. Definitely not, because we picked up a sign of life outside the ship. Repeat that last,
I said.
There's indication that one of the crew members is spacewalking outside the ship. See that gray node just around the upper right-hand solar panel? He should be around there. Roger that,
I said and looked up. Beyond the top of the station was exactly what was under it. Endless, vast void. It was a long ascent, especially because of the speed of the thrusters, but I slowly made my way up. Halfway there, I stopped at the sight in front of me.
Holy shit,
I mumbled.
Ian, you okay?
James asked. I stared in bewilderment, unable to respond. The airlock, which led inside the station, was wide open. That was not uncommon if astronauts went on repair missions which were short. But what bothered me here was the fact that both airlock doors were wide open, letting out all the air.
Guys,
I said.
Something bad happened here. Both airlock doors are wide open.
There was silence on the other end, until Riley simply uttered a dumbfounded,
"What?"
Probably human error,
I said.
That's impossible,
Adams scoffed.
The system would have warned them tenfold. You would have to be a complete idiot, suicidal even, to make a mistake like that one. Well then, I can't explain this,
I said and continued ascending. Pretty soon, I reached the top and had a good view of the entire station. The place seemed completely undamaged, so it made sense to me that someone simply made a mistake when opening the airlock.
Any sign of survivors?
Adams asked. I scanned the area and at first saw nothing. And then I noticed it. An astronaut, blended with the white exterior of the station, just floating around upside down. He showed no signs of movement, so I assumed he was either dead or unconscious.
I see something. Hold up.
I leaned forward and activated the thrusters once more. As I got closer, I tried to speak into the radio to avoid startling the crew member in case he was still alive.
This is Ian Nielsen. Does anyone from the ISS-14 copy?
As I suspected, there was no response. So I simply said,
We're here to rescue you. Try not to move while I attach the safety cord to you.
I got close enough to the astronaut to grab his hand and turn him around. I saw a man under the helmet, seemingly sleeping peacefully. His forehead and the inside of his helmet had blood on them, and I would have thought he was dead, had I not seen the helmet getting fucked up every few seconds from his steady breathing. He had a name tag on his chest that said Harrington.
I found one. He's alive, but he seems to be injured,
I said.
Alright, bring him back, and we'll decide later what to do with the station,
Adams said. I detached the safety cord from myself and attached it to the astronaut. I held the cord with one hand and pressed the button on it. It began slowly pulling the both of us back towards the ship.
Alright, I got him. We're going back.
I stared at the ISS-14 as it grew distant again, occasionally glancing at Harrington to see if he was still breathing. We had passed by the open airlock, and I kept squinting at it, mesmerized and trying to take a closer look, but it was too dark. When it was out of my line of sight, I glanced back at the astronaut. His eyes were wide open, and he was staring at me. I stared at him for a while, not sure if he was dead or alive, or catatonic. But then, I saw him blink. He started darting his eyes around frantically. I finally broke free of my trance and said,
"Hey, it's okay, you're safe now. I'm from the Collector 03. We were sent to rescue you."
Harrington mumbled timidly.
"Rescue? Yeah, I don't know what happened, but you seem to be the only survivor. I'm bringing you back to our ship."
At this sentence, Harrington's eyes widened even more, and he started panting. Within seconds, he was writhing and screaming, shouting incoherent words. He almost shook me off the cord, and I tried calming him down, but it was hard with the cacophony of radio voices asking me what was going on and Harrington's screaming and squirming.
"Hey, calm down. Calm down."
I tried to hold him still, but it was impossible.
"Don't do it. Don't bring them back."
I managed to grab those words among all the incoherence in Harrington's sentences.
"There's no one else left of your crew. You're the only survivor."
I shouted, but he continued ignoring me. And then, he started coughing violently. Droplets of blood splashed the inside of his helmet, adding to the other already dried blood. He had a coughing fit for about half a minute, and he took a few deep breaths. Then his eyes closed, and he seemingly lost consciousness again.
"Ian, report, damn it!"
Adams shouted over the radio. It took me a moment to recompose myself, and then I answered.
"I think he has internal bleeding. We have to hurry. Riley, get the first aid kit ready."
On it.
Riley responded. Within minutes, Harrington and I were back in the airlock. I pressed the button and closed the external door and pressurized the chamber, putting Harrington in a laying position. Airlock pressurized. Welcome back. As soon as the internal door opened, the crew rushed in and put Harrington on a stretcher, carrying him to the infirmary. I took off my helmet and, with the suit still on, followed them.
Get a suit off.
Riley's voice echoed through the ship. Harrington was laying on his back on a table, Riley on the side of it, taking off his helmet. I got to the other side of the table and helped him take the suit off him. When I reached to help him take his garment off, the astronaut firmly gripped my wrist like a vice. Our eyes met, and again, he had that same petrified look on his face as before. "Please don't do it, just get me now." He mumbled something, but I couldn't understand him. I leaned in and told him to repeat what he said. "You brought them back," he said with a trembling voice. I looked down in time to see Riley take off Harrington's garment, and an audible scream was heard from her, along with gasps from the other crew members. When I looked down, I could hardly comprehend what I was seeing. Harrington had a gaping hole in his stomach, and in it, hundreds of thousands of maggots were squirming around, eating away at his wound. They started hopping, some managing to jump onto Riley's arm. She screamed and violently swatted at them, making a break for the exit. Harrington started coughing again, more violently than before. Just before he stopped moving completely, the blood from his cough spurted over my suit, and I recoiled. When I looked down, I nearly started screaming. Along with the blood, there were crimson maggots slithering towards my head. I swatted at them, disgusted and in a panic at the same time. "Get out of here!" Adams shouted. We didn't need any more encouragement. We rushed outside, and once everyone was out, we pressed the button to lock the door. We glanced through the glass on the door at Harrington's body. More and more maggots squirmed out of Harrington's wound, impossibly many to fit into his stomach alone, swarming his exposed body parts and feasting away on his remains. Is everybody okay? Anyone get bit? Adams asked. Most of us nodded. Riley, what the hell was that? James asked, beads of sweat forming on his temples. Riley opened her mouth as if to say something, her gaze still fixated on the infirmary. She shook her head without saying anything. How the hell did he get maggots on him? I asked. Even if he had a necrotic wound, there's no way so many maggots could just come out of his stomach like that. Well, the only explanation is he or one of the crew members were infected and it got out of control, Adams said. Either way, it doesn't matter. We have to get in touch with HQ. He turned around and left the corridor, and everyone else started towards the control room after him. Riley and I were at the back, and she started down the corridor. I grabbed her arm, a little firmer than I planned to. She shot me a look of confusion as I stared at her exposed forearm. Riley, those maggots touched you. Did they bite you? I asked, silently enough for others not to hear.
No,
She said and jerked her arm free of my grip and looked at me as if she was offended.
you think I would just jeopardize the whole crew like that?
I don't. I just...
And what about you? The ISS member coughed up some maggots on you.
I'm clean. I'm positive, I said with our eyes locked. She crossed her arms and seemed to calm down. She said,
Well, we should all get tested anyway. But we don't have the necessary equipment here.
Right, our priority should be contacting HQ and getting back. If any of us are infected, they can quarantine us. She nodded and motioned me to join the rest of the crew. We entered the control room and heard Carter's voice on the other end of the room. This is the US Collector 03. HQ, do you copy?
This is HQ. What's your situation, Collector?
A crackly voice came through the radio. Move aside, Adams commanded Carter and pressed the button on the panel. HQ, this is Captain Adams. We arrived at the site of the ISS-14. Everyone but one crew member died mysteriously. We managed to bring the crew member back on board, but he died shortly after. There was a brief moment of pause before HQ said,
What happened?
We don't know for sure. The crew member we brought back seems to have been infected. He had flesh-eating maggots under his suit. We had to seal off the infirmary, since we don't know the extent of the threat.
Understood, Collector. Right now, your priority is sterilizing the contaminated areas, in case these maggots can do some serious damage to the vessel. Once you've done that, haul ass back to base so we can quarantine and treat you, if necessary. We're sending someone out there right now.
Copy that, HQ. Collector out. Adams turned to us with his typical stern look and said, Well, you heard him. Let's first sterilize the infirmary. Hank pressed the button on the control panel. When nothing happened, he pressed it again. He flipped the switch up and down and pressed the button once more before he started repeatedly slamming it. What's going on, Hank? Carter asked. Hank pressed the button a few more times before responding. The sterilization won't work. Button's not responding. Try some other rooms, Carter suggested. Hank did that and pressed various other buttons, but still no dice.
Shit, now what?
Riley mumbled. Adams sighed and turned to James. He said, James, I need you to put on the hazmat suit and decontaminate the infirmary manually. No fucking way, James rebutted. Have you seen what those angry little fuckers can do? I'm not going in there. You'll do your job. Adams got into James's face before calming down. Besides, the suit will protect you. He then said to Hank and Carter, Start the engine. Might as well get going while we're doing this. He turned around to approach the holographic map on the table when Carter spoke. Captain? The engine won't start. Adams turned back and frowned, now visibly frustrated. What do you mean it won't start? Start it. It won't fucking start, Carter blurted. There was a moment of intense silence in the room. Adams rubbed his chin and then turned to me. Ian, check the engine, but put the protection suit on, just in case. I gave him a silent nod of agreement and left the room. James followed behind me. This is bullshit. He threw his hands up in the air as we made our way to the lockers. Suck it up, James. The sooner we finish our job, the sooner we can go home, I scoffed. We donned our protective suits and inspected each other for potential faults. And once we were sure everything was okay, I picked up my tools and we went our merry ways. My job was to go under the ship's bottom floor and inspect the engine, and to do that, I had to remove the floor panel and climb down. As I did so and entered the corridor, I heard James's trembling voice on the radio.
Jesus Christ. Captain, I'm in front of the infirmary. There's more of them in here. What do you mean?
Adams asked.
I mean, there's millions of them. All over the fucking place. I can't even see Harrington's body anymore. Jesus fuck.
My stomach started twisting into knots. I didn't like this at all. Adams continued.
James, calm down. Listen, we have to decontaminate the room before they spread to the other parts of the ship. Your suit will protect you. Pull the switch, wait until the process is done, and get out. Alright.
James sighed over the radio.
I'm going in.
Adams spoke to me and asked how things were going on my end, and I told him I was close to the engine. It was darker down here, so I used the flashlight to illuminate the way in front. The corridor echoed with the heavy thuds of my footsteps as I made my way through, until I reached the panel above my head, which said, "Do not remove."
James, talk to me.
Adams said.
I'm still okay, Captain, but I had to stomp all over them. It's disgusting. They seem to be ignoring me, though. Did you pull the switch?
I pulled out my screwdriver and started to unscrew the panel off.
Not yet, but I'm almost... Ah! Shit!
James shouted.
James, what happened?
Adams asked.
Something just fucking bit me!
James yelled.
James, that's impossible. They can't get through your suit. It's made out of. There's a fucking hole in my boot. Fuck, I gotta get out of here.
My heart was thumping against my chest rapidly at this point, and I had to stop doing my own job. My left hand frozen on the panel and the other on the screw.
They're in my suit. Oh God!
James shouted.
Get out of there!
Adams shouted loudly. The next few seconds were filled with James's screams over the radio, intermittently getting louder and quieter, until they stopped completely.
James?
I shouted, my own voice trembling now. There was no response, however. Adams shouted again.
Ian, get the hell out of there! Alright, let me just fix the engine. Ian, forget the engine and get back here now! Hold on, if I fix the engine we can...
The panel partially fell open when I took the second screw off, and from the gap, hundreds of red maggots poured through, falling to the ground with wet slumps. I recoiled in fear as the maggots continued to pour out and pile on the ground in front of me. They started bouncing one by one, trying to reach me. I screamed and bolted for the ladder. All the while, the voices of my crew members echoed through the radio, asking me what was going on. I climbed up and slammed the floor panel shut, leaving me with only the sound of my own frantic breathing. And then I heard a thud, and then another, and another. In moments, hundreds of thuds were heard on the panel, like the sound of rainfall. And I could see the floor bending outwards under the pressure. Maggots started crawling from under the edges of the dented panel, and I screamed again, running for dear life.
Ian, respond! Abandoned ship!
I shouted between breaths, looking back behind me. I could already see thousands of maggots on the ground and walls behind me.
What's going on?
Adams shouted.
Maggots! Everywhere! Get to your suits! We have to run!
I ran straight to the locker and took off my protective suit, donning the space one instead. My trembling hands making it difficult to suit up. The rest of the crew members were there in a matter of seconds, putting their own suits on. No time for inspection, get to the airlock, Adams shouted. I ran out first, rushing down the corridor, and stopped when I glanced at the infirmary. James was slumped over the threshold, leaving the door open. He had managed to take his suit off, down to his waist, before he died. Maggots were wiggling inside his empty eye socket, and his teeth were visible due to his lips being completely eaten. His body and the areas in front and inside the infirmary were crawling with maggots, possibly millions, piling atop each other on every single surface of the room, making it look like it was moving with their slithering. Adams pushed me, and I forced myself to look away and continue running. We rushed inside the airlock, and as I turned around, I saw Hank lagging behind, running towards us. His right arm had maggots on it, which he seemingly wasn't aware of. All of us were probably thinking the same thing, but no one wanted to say it. That's why Adams stepped up and closed the airlock before Hank could get inside. Depressurizing airlock, stand by. Hank slammed the button to open the airlock from the outside, but it wasn't responsive during the pressurization.
Captain, let me in. They're close.
He looked behind at the mass, which drew closer by the second. Hank, I'm so sorry, Adam said. Hank started screaming and flailing his arms. Maggots started appearing in his helmet, and he threw it off, trying to run in the opposite direction in a desperate attempt to escape. He never stood a chance, since the maggots swarmed up to his knees in seconds and trapped him like quicksand before he was completely covered by them. Riley screamed and cried, trying to put her hands on her mouth, but unable to because of the helmet. Opening airlock. The door opened, and all went silent again. Never before has the inhospitable vacuum of space felt so welcoming. For a while, we floated in silence, processing what just happened. And then Adams spoke up. A sentence which sent a chill down my spine so sharply that, for a moment, I thought that I myself had maggots in my suit.
We need to get to the ISS-14,
he said, somberly. Riley and I shot each other a confused stare, but said nothing. Adams was already well on his way to the airlock of the SS-14, slowly propelling himself with his thrusters. Carter followed closely behind, and soon the entire group of survivors was unanimously headed towards the silent behemoth of a ship.
Captain, there might be maggots in there,
I said through the radio.
I know,
Adams's voice came tiredly through the radio.
But some of us are low on oxygen. We need to replenish it, and if possible, repressurize the station. We need to contact HQ and warn them of the dangers here before those maggots spread.
Even though no one responded, it was clear that we all agreed. After all, we had only two choices: drift around in the vacuum of space until help came, or try to find shelter inside. Both options seemed equally daunting.
What the hell are those things? Space maggots?
Carter asked.
Whatever they are, they can't be allowed to go back to Earth,
Adams responded. We reached the airlock of the ISS-14 and went inside. The entire ship seemed to be dark, so we turned on our belt flashlights.
Should we close the hatch?
Riley asked.
Yeah, might as well, but if the station is infected, we might have a better chance surviving in the vacuum. So be ready for a quick venting,
Adam said, slowly propelling himself deeper into the station. Carter clicked the button to close the exterior airlock door, and once we were inside, he closed the interior one as well. Adams went ahead, the corridor illuminated by his flashlight like a wave of light. We followed him, nervously jumping at every tiny detail on the walls which resembled maggots or seemed like it was moving.
All the doors are open, except the control room,
Adam said.
Yeah, so?
Carter asked.
They may have vented the station from there. Common procedure is that in case any venting needs to be done, all astronauts are to put on their suits and head to the control room. Well, let's see if anyone is inside,
I said. Adams nodded and pressed the button next to the door. A message popped up that said, "Warning, pressure inside the room is higher than the pressure outside. Do you wish to equalize pressure?" Adams clicked on yes. "Equalizing pressure, stand by." The message blinked on and off for a few minutes, and I felt myself becoming heavier gradually as the gravity adjusted, until all four of us were with our feet on the floor. The display turned green as it said, "Pressure adjusted. Warning, emergency power online. Oxygen production offline. Please use emergency oxygen stations to replenish your oxygen." The door slid aside and we were met with the dim red glow of the control room. Immediately, we saw the body of an astronaut lying face down in the corner of the room. Riley rushed to the crew member and turned her to herself, but her look of vague hope turned to disappointment.
She's dead.
The rest of us approached and saw the astronaut's face. It was a young woman, no older than 30, blue in the face, but despite the color of her skin, she looked like she was sleeping peacefully. Her name tag said, Moody. "She's holding something," Carter said. We glanced down and saw what looked like a camcorder in her hand. Adam snatched it and opened it, and the rest of us gathered around him. There was a folder open, and Adams highlighted the first video by date. It started playing. The video was from the perspective of one of the astronauts, male, judging by the voice. He was hovering above the ISS and zooming in on something on top of the ship. When he zoomed in enough, it became visible that there was some sort of red egg floating around. If he was saying anything, we couldn't hear him in the vacuum of space. The video cut out, and the next frame showed the astronaut gently holding the object from the previous footage in his hand. The red egg had veiny marks on it, and it was slightly bigger than the astronaut's palm. The astronaut flipped the egg from side to side, examining it curiously. The video ended there. Adams played the next video. The frame showed the egg from before, now in a glass display case inside the station.
What the hell is that?
The person recording, now a female scientist, asked.
No idea.
Another voice responded.
Harrington found it outside, and HQ wanted it brought back.
What if it's dangerous?
The female astronaut asked.
Well, whatever it is, it won't break this case. Nothing can. The scanner shows no signs of activity inside the egg.
A third voice said. The camera zoomed in on the egg before the video ended abruptly. Adams played the next one. This video showed the same room as before, but now the camera was placed on the desk, since we could see Moody sitting by it, facing the camera.
Base wants the egg tested. They don't want to risk bringing the egg to Earth, so I've been appointed as lead scientist. My job is to monitor the egg and conduct tests to see what's inside. So far, there's nothing strange about the egg itself. Maybe it's not even an egg. I'll continue to run tests.
She reached out for the camera, and the video ended. The next video showed the same scene, and a visibly more tired Moody. She rubbed her eyes and faced the camera, before saying,
Another egg was found today. Nelson was performing a module check when he saw it. Despite initial skepticism, the egg will be taken back to base for study. There were apparently more, and all seemed to be coming from one direction. There may be a nest close by. As for this one, there seems to be some signs of minor activity inside. Hard to tell what it is though. Whatever it is, it could be our actual first contact.
She ended the video. I heard Carter mumble, "Oh shit," under his breath. Adams played the next video. The footage showed the same egg from before, but it was now cracked at the top and on the side. Tiny crimson maggots were squirming around the display case lazily.
What are those?
Moody asked.
Alien worms?
a voice next to her asked.
Was the egg rotten?
She inquired.
Didn't look like it. Maybe the worms are supposed to hatch out of it. No idea.
One of the maggots started slithering on the glass, moving upwards. The camera zoomed in, and I clearly saw the bodies of the maggots crawling over each other. It looked like they had tiny hairs on their bodies. The video ended. I felt itchy all over my body, unable to shake the feeling of bugs crawling all over me. The next video showed Moody in the same room. There was visibly a lot more maggots inside the display. She said,
They are reproducing at an enormous pace. The maggots seem to be dormant in the vacuum, but able to survive. Keith followed the trace where the eggs are coming from, and he says he found their nest close by. It seems that this is really going to be first contact. He hasn't responded to our call yet though, so the signal must be bad there.
The video ended, and there was only one more video remaining. Adams played it. The frame was shaky, but we saw what was clearly the room from the previous footages. However, this time the glass display was broken, and there were countless maggots all over the place, covering every inch of the floor and every piece of item and furniture inside the room. The egg inside the display was broken into pieces now, and barely visible from all the maggots crawling over it.
Moody, move!
Someone shouted. Moody panted in panic and pressed the button to lock the door. She pointed the camera left, down the hallway, and thousands more maggots came into view. Moody turned around and ran. A blood-curdling scream was heard somewhere before it was completely silenced. Moody ran inside the control room and turned around. Harrington came into view with his spacesuit. He pressed the button to lock the door from the outside and shouted,
Moody, vent the station.
Wait, what about you and the others?
No time, I'll open the second airlock. Get ready.
He ran out of view, ignoring Moody's plea to stop. Another scream was heard over Moody's radio. She stood in the room, panting in panic and looking over her shoulder.
Moody, do it!
Harrington shouted over the radio. Moody approached the panel in the corner of the room and opened it, revealing a big switch. She grabbed it and held it hesitantly.
Moody, don't! I can't get to my spacesuit.
Another crew member's voice came through.
Do it!
Harrington shouted. Moody was audibly crying by this moment. With hesitation, she pulled the switch down and heard another short-lived scream. The video cut out and came back the following second, showing Moody in a dim-lit room with red light, gasping for air. She pointed the camera towards herself. Tears were streaming down her face. She exhaled with a trembling voice and said,
Oxygen production was damaged. I only have a few minutes left. HQ doesn't know what happened, and everyone else is dead. All of the maggots have been vented out, but the nest is still out there. Whoever finds this, you have to destroy the nest. It's close by. The coordinates are on the wall here.
She pointed the camera at a wall, and we unanimously looked at the numbers on the wall, which were still there. Moody took a few shallow breaths and said,
Also, please send my final message to my sister.
She started sobbing more.
Haley, I'm so sorry. You were right. Space is really bad. I wish I'd listened to you. I'm glad Mom isn't alive to witness this. I'm sorry for being so stubborn. I'll always love you, little sister.
She sniffled and cried before turning off the camera. The four of us stared at the blank screen in silence. Jesus, Carter muttered. So, what now? I asked. Adams sighed and gently placed the camcorder next to Moody's body. We're going to the nest, he said with determination. Whoa, Captain, you can't be serious, Carter said. Carter, you can stay if you like, Adams said and looked at Riley and I. Same goes for you too. Wait for rescue if you like, but I have to finish this. "No way, Captain. I'm coming with you," I said. Riley agreed to come too. So in the end, Carter threw his hands up in the air and said he'd come along as well. "Alright, then let's fucking do this," Adam said. We replenished our oxygen tanks and found whatever could be used as a weapon. There were no guns aboard the ISS, which probably wouldn't be useful against maggots anyway. So instead, we grabbed lighters, deodorant cans, and pieces of cloth that we could set on fire. Before we knew it, we were back outside in the vacuum of space. Adams led the way, propelling himself through, with the three of us following closely behind.
How the fuck do we even know how this place looks?
Carter asked.
For all we know, it could just be a floating nest and long gone from that location. No choice,
Adams replied.
We gotta find that thing. If not us, someone else will have to do it. We're not paid to do this sort of Carter. If you're just gonna bitch the whole time, then turn back and get the fuck out of here.
Adams shouted through the radio. Carter hasn't responded. We flew in silence for a while, until Riley spotted some tiny object in the distance. It looked round and reddish.
What the fuck is that?
I asked, immediately suspecting to one thing. Adams flew there and grabbed the object, inspecting it curiously. He turned to us so that we can observe it as well.
An egg, just like in Moody's footage,
he said, letting the egg float. Indeed, it looked exactly like the red veiny egg in the video. I saw more details than in the video though. In addition to the bulging veins, there were thin, orange ones on the inside, visible on the surface. It reminded me of the time when I cracked open an egg, and instead of the yolk, saw an embryo of a chick. Adams grabbed his spray can and lighter.
Everybody, back up,
he said. He flicked the lighter on and the flame appeared, moving not upwards like in normal gravity, but dancing in various directions, almost like when blood starts to flow underwater. Adams put the spray can behind the flame and pressed the button. Although we heard no sound, we saw the wave of flame expanding like a torch and setting the egg aflame. Immediately, we saw little maggots wiggling out and going for the captain. But Adams didn't let up with the flame. His face intense with revenge and anger, the flame reflecting from his helmet. He was practically burning them to a crisp. Even after the egg was nothing more than a burnt shell, he continued burning it.
Captain, you got him. Let's go,
Carter said. Adams finally let up, observing his artistic piece of work, before letting out one more gust of flame and then turning around.
Let's go,
he said emotionlessly. We were far ahead of the ISS by this point, a good 20 minutes since we left. The station seemed tiny from here, and we were mere specks of dust floating through space, surrounded by miles and miles of vast nothingness.
Captain, we still on the right track?
I asked. Adams kept quiet for a moment, and then pointed over yonder. Riley, Carter, and I looked in the direction he was pointing, and there it was. Some kind of an object in the distance. It was hard to tell what it was, but it looked rectangular, human-made, and not crude like a piece of rock from space. We started seeing eggs more frequently floating past us, but there were too many to deal with individually, so we just let them be. As we got closer, it became clearer that the object we were seeing was indeed like a cube. Greenish in color, with black lines going along the edges like columns.
Is this it?
Carter asked. It was big, a lot bigger than I anticipated, easily towering over 50 feet on each side. Right in front of us was a rectangle-shaped entrance near the bottom part of the cube object. One egg floated out of there, spinning in the air. Adams pushed it out of the way and illuminated the entrance. It had the same kind of green and black colors like on the exterior, but nothing noteworthy about it. He looked at me and gestured with his head for me to go in. I did as he said, and gasped in awe at what I saw. The interior looked exactly like the exterior, but the greenish lines that went along the walls glowed in color that gave off the vibe of radioactive material, showering me and my crew members in sickly green. I realized that there were eggs strewn about, firmly stuck on the walls in some sort of gooey substance.
What the fuck? This must be the nest. Captain, are you seeing this?
Carter asked. When we got no response from Adams, we shot around to see what was going on. Before we realized what was happening, the exit slid shut and Adams was out of sight, the green glowing brighter now.
Captain!
I shouted. For a moment, there was only silence. And then Adams spoke.
I'm sorry, guys. I didn't want to do this. You see, these worms aren't just flesh-eating parasites. The maggots can devour things quickly, yeah, and they can reproduce quickly too. But they are also intelligent beyond our comprehension.
My heart was beating fast at this moment, and I got a really bad feeling.
Captain, open this fucking door!
Carter slammed on the wall, which was previously an open space. Adams continued.
They can get inside the host and devour him from the inside out in a matter of seconds, taking control of the body. You see, Adams wasn't careful enough when evacuating the ship, and the three of you didn't care enough to check him for any marks. I can't allow you to stop this process.
Carter started slamming the door harder, Riley visibly panicking, and I kept glancing around to see if any of the eggs had hatched by any chance. Just then, a voice came over our radio.
ISS-14, this is HQ. Is anyone still alive there? HQ, we're here! We got a situation here!
I shouted into the radio. A moment later, HQ said again.
This is HQ. Is anyone alive out there?
I tried again, along with Riley and Carter, but they couldn't hear us. And then Adams spoke.
HQ, this is Captain Adams of the Collector. There are no other survivors. I'm on my way to you now. Copy that, Adams. We'll stand by.
HQ said. We tried contacting HQ again, but to no avail. Either Adams jumped our signal or it was blocked inside the structure. Just then, I caught something with my peripheral vision. One of the eggs had started to hatch, and maggots were wiggling out of it.
We gotta get out of here,
I said. Carter was still busy slamming the door and trying to contact HQ, unaware of the eggs hatching.
Carter, we gotta get the fuck out now,
I said. He finally realized the severity of our situation, and all three of us started propelling each other through the structure, using spray cans and lighters to burn everything and anything that got anywhere close to our vicinity. We had the advantage of the structure being spacious and the worms not being able to jump around in vacuum, so we were relatively safe, except for the ones that made their way accidentally to us. The structure seemed to wind around as a corridor, eggs and slime decorating most of its interior. I started to lose hope, and I thought this place would become my tomb, leaving my body to float in the vacuum of space for hundreds of years. But then we saw the exit in the form of a square-shaped hole. We propelled ourselves out, turning around only to burn the rest of the maggots that stumbled outside.
Shit!
Carter screamed, swatting at his own hand and trying to grab something, but it was too late. There was already a tiny hole in his suit, letting out a steady gust of wind. Carter grabbed his helmet with both hands. The shocking realization of what he was about to do hit me, and I tried to stop him.
Carter, no!
I shouted, but it was too late. Carter twisted, and his helmet came off. Instantly, his face started contorting into one of palpable pain and changing colors. I tried to put his helmet back on, but he pushed me and threw the helmet further away. You'd think that dying in the vacuum of space is a relatively quick process, but it's not. It's very slow and very painful. Carter convulsed, his face turning blue and bloating, his eyes turning bloodshot for what felt like minutes, until he stopped moving completely and was left floating in the air as a rag doll.
Ian, we gotta go.
Riley sobbed, and I knew she was right. We tried contacting HQ, but it didn't work. So we simply flew back to the ISS as fast as we could. We had to stop Adams, or whatever those maggots controlling him were. After around 20 minutes, we finally got back and saw another ship waiting nearby. We were greeted by the crew members who needed a few minutes to understand what we were rambling about. When I finally asked them about Adams, they said he already left with the other team. We tried to explain what had happened, but no one believed us. We had to tell them to go and check out the structure for themselves, but to bring flamethrowers. That took another hour, and when they came back with 2 men less, they asked us to tell them everything. Adams had returned to Earth by then. When we got back, we got information that he volunteered to be on the team which is running tests on the alien egg brought back to Earth. Again, they refused to believe our claims that he was being controlled by space maggots. So, we knew we had to take care of things ourselves. It's been 2 days, but Riley and I managed to get to the base. I'm afraid that this will be my last mission though. I discovered a tiny wound on my right hand when I got back to Earth. There is no pain or anything, but something is wrong. I can feel it. First, I lost control of my hand, and now my entire right arm. It's moving, but not by my own action. I can already feel part of my neck doing involuntary movement, so I'm afraid I'm a goner. Adams needs to be stopped and the egg destroyed. Even so, I feel like this is a losing battle that we're fighting. That structure out in space was made by someone or something other than humans. And they put those eggs there for a reason. God, help us. They're still out there. Those were the last words in my grandfather's diary, which was found open on the table, at which he shot himself in 2019. I was the one who found his body, a hole blasted through his head with his old army pistol. I can still see the scene to this day. Blood dripping down the sides of the desk, the metallic scent in the air. I don't think it'll ever leave me. But that's not why I'm writing this. After I had grieved, that sentence began filling me with a morbid curiosity. Who, what, was out there? My grandfather had always been a quiet man who kept to himself and spoke little about his past. He had served in the army of the USSR in his youth, and I always assumed he kept silent about it out of guilt in being part of one of the cruelest regimes in the history of the world. After translating and reading his diary, I know better. That's what I'm here to tell you about. I know what he was keeping quiet about, and why he took his life in 2019. It's all in the diary he kept during his time in the army. The first few months he writes about are mundane, mostly detailing his training and first deployment. What is clear from these parts is that he was a patriotic man who had no trouble following orders. A soldier who kept his mouth shut and his head down. That's probably what got him where he ended up. 6 months after his training, he was transferred to a base in the Ural Mountains he had never heard of. And that's where things start to get strange. This is his story. September 2nd, 1958. This place is like no base I have ever been stationed at. It's cut into the side of the mountains themselves, almost wholly concealed, and practically undetectable from the outside. We're not allowed any communication with the rest of the world. The base is built in 5 descending levels, going down to the roots of the mountain. Each level is accessed by a single tunnel, with airlocks and security stations connecting them. Without authorization, you cannot leave the level you are currently in. Our commander is a hard man named Sergei Yauntov. He talks little and is ruthless in disciplining his soldiers. I have only seen him once on my arrival here. He gave us our standing orders, which must be obeyed at all times. These orders are what gave me pause about this whole situation. They seem ludicrous, but several men have already been punished for not keeping them in mind. If any staff members acts disoriented or follows you to a secluded part of the base, sound the alarm immediately. You are authorized to use lethal force if they do not desist. If you find yourself in a place you do not remember entering, sound the alarm immediately and lie face down on the floor with your hands on your head. But the strangest order is the last. If you are stationed at level 5 and the screaming stops, sound the alarm immediately. You are authorized to use lethal force until relieved. I don't know what to think of this. I wish to serve my country, but these orders fill me with a strange dread I've never felt before. September 5th, 1958. Today, I befriended another soldier stationed here. His name is Yuri Ivanovich, a private like me. He seems talkative and friendly, an unusual trait among the soldiers stationed here. And he was eager to talk once I told him I was new at the base. We were discussing the strangeness of the place and the secrecy surrounding it, when I summoned the courage to ask him about what our purpose here was. Yuri, I began carefully. Do you know anything about what this place is supposed to be? What is level 5? And what is that screaming the orders mention? Yuri's smile faded. He leaned in closer to me. It's best you don't ask about level 5, Mikhail, he said under his breath. Nothing good ever comes of talking about that place. Keep your head down, and you might be lucky enough never to go down there. My skin crawled. Yuri was usually a quite amiable man, but now he was deadly serious. What's level 5 though? Have you ever been sent down there? I haven't, no, he answered. Thank God, but I know someone who has. What happened to him? I asked, realizing I too was instinctively whispering. He came back, but he was never the same, Yuri answered sadly. He's been changed ever since. Even the fact he came back is not common. Many soldiers sent to level 5 never return. Did he ever tell you about what he saw there? Only one thing. 5 years. He told me. They have been screaming in the caves for 5 years. Yuri would tell me no more and left me at my post with more questions than answers. September 11th, 1958. Yesterday we were sent on patrol in the area surrounding the base. The surrounding mountains are an icy wasteland, and I was freezing within minutes of setting foot outside. Yuri was in our unit. He had regained his usual happy demeanor since our conversation, and seemed almost untroubled by the biting cold. Our orders were simple. If we met anyone, we were to make sure they came nowhere near the mountain. We were to remain hidden, if possible. But if we found any hikers going in the direction of our base, we were authorized to use any necessary measures to dissuade them. I hoped it wouldn't come to that. We only came across a single group of travelers, and thankfully they were going in a direction which would take them away from our base. We departed shortly after making sure they weren't a threat. Whatever it is we are guarding here, it is so dangerous that even the lives of Soviet citizens are a worthy price to pay for keeping it secret. September 14th, 1958. Today, Yuri introduced me to the soldier who had been to level 5. It was a complete accident that all three of us were stationed at the same guard post. Yuri, always talkative, took no time in starting a conversation to make the hours go by faster. The soldier's name is Ivan. He was a thin man with nervous eyes that flicked from side to side constantly. He talks in an anxious whisper. Yuri wasn't lying. Whatever Ivan saw at level 5, it has left him changed forever. Yuri wouldn't let me talk with him about his time there, but I didn't even want to once I saw the man's state of mind. It would be cruel to remind him of something so obviously traumatizing. But even so, I left the meeting more anxious about this place than before. Ivan wouldn't stop whispering to himself. It was quiet, under his breath, but I made one sentence out clearly enough. 5 years, 5 years, 5 years. It's been inside them, in the dark, for 5 years. The next few months go by with not much interesting happening. My grandfather spends most of his time either out on patrol in the surrounding areas or on guard duty in various parts of the base. He is never sent down to level 5 and doesn't inquire more about it. The next interesting entry is in mid-December. December 15th, 1958. I will never forget this day. We were on guard duty, checking the staff going from level 4 to level 3. It had been a long shift, 5 hours so far, with 3 more to go. It was nearing midnight when things started going to shit. It was a quiet moment, and the corridor was empty, except for me and Yuri, when the man appeared. He was a researcher, not a soldier, balding with a pair of spectacles and a round red face. He was strangely hunched over, dragging his feet and looking at the floor. I figured he was simply tired after a long shift. "Papers, please, comrade," I asked him as he came up to my post. He looked up at me, and I started back. His eyes were red and bloodshot, darting from side to side, just like Ivan's. He mumbled something under his breath and made to walk past me. I stepped into his path. He hadn't given me any identification, and I couldn't let him pass me by. "Comrade, I need to see your authorization before you can leave level 4. The man was looking at the ground again. Now he was closer to me. I could see him shivering. He was mumbling something under his breath. I leaned closer in to hear him. "They can't get out. They can't get out. We left them there for 5 years. 5 years. I backed away slightly, raising my firearm. Yuri could see something was wrong and aimed his gun at the man's head. "Comrade," he said loud and slow, "please give us your authorization." The man looked at him, wide-eyed. "Have you been to level 5, soldier?" he asked in a hoarse whisper. Have you heard the trapped men scream?" "I need you to lie down right now," I said, panic rising in me. No amount of military training could prepare me for one of our own to behave like this. Yuri circled around, moving behind the man. The researcher didn't seem to notice, his attention totally fixed on me. He stumbled forwards, and I aimed my gun in nerveless fingers. "They can never get out. he said, his voice trembling. "If any men are trapped in level 5, we will get them out," I said, trying to sound soothing and calm, even as my heart hammered in my chest. The men," the researcher mumbled. Then he laughed. No. The men are trapped. But it's not them. They can never be freed. They're not alone in the caves. He looked me dead in the eyes. It's the things in them. They can never escape. He lunged forward, making to run past me. A gunshot rang through the corridor. The researcher crumbled to the floor, blood leaking from his chest. Commander Sergei Yahuntov stood behind Yuri, a smoking pistol in his hand. His face was twisted and barely contained fury. I snapped to attention, Yuri quickly following suit. "What is your first standing order, Private?" he asked, walking face to face with us and looking at me. "To sound the alarm if any staff members appear disoriented or follows us, sir. We are allowed to use lethal force if they do not comply with our command, sir." "And did this man comply, Private?" "He did not, sir." "Then why did you not sound the alarm? Why was this man still alive when I found you?" "You forget your orders, and that can't be tolerated in this base. There is a punishment for disobedience, Private." He smiled cruelly. "You will both report to level 5 tomorrow at noon." My blood ran cold. Yuri stepped up to Sergei. "Permission to speak, sir." "Granted." "The blame is mine, sir. I told Private Mikhail Sidorov to hold fire. I have overstepped my rank and disobeyed standing orders." I opened my mouth in shock. Yuri was lying. He was protecting my skin at his own risk. He shot me a quick glance and shook his head almost imperceptibly. I shut my mouth. "The situation was your fault then?" Sergei asked him slowly. "Yes, sir." "Then you will report to level 5 tomorrow, alone. Now continue in your task. A cleanup team will arrive shortly to dispose of this body." With that, he walked off. I turned to Yuri once Sergei was out of earshot. "Are you mad? I'm to blame too. You can't take the fall for this. You know what level 5 did to Ivan and to that researcher. You can't possibly keep calm, Mikhail." Yuri cut me off. I could tell he was trying to remain casual and managing so with great difficulty. There's no reason for two of us to go down there if we can avoid it. "I'll be fine. Don't worry. It can't be as bad as everyone would have you believe." He smiled wryly. "Besides, this way I can tell you about what's down there when I get back." The rest of our guard shift was carried out in silence. Yuri then departed to his bunk to catch some sleep before he has to report to level 5. But I cannot sleep. I can't stop thinking what could be waiting down there, and what my friend might come back like, if he comes back at all. December 16th, 1958. Yuri has not yet returned from level 5. It's almost midnight, and I still haven't seen any sign of him. December 17th, 1958. Still no sign of Yuri. I can't sleep. I stay awake for hours wondering if he's alright. December 19th, 1958. Yuri still hasn't come back. What is happening down there? December 20th, 1958. Today, I couldn't take it anymore. When my guard duty ended this evening, I managed to catch Commander Yahuntov while he was on his way to the officers' quarters. "Permission to speak, sir." My voice was hoarse with trepidation of this conversation. He looked at me, a sort of apathetic curiosity coming over his face. He glanced down at my name tag. "Granted, Private Sidorov." "Sir, 5 days ago, my friend, Private Yuri Ivanovich, was sent to level 5 He hasn't come back since then. I am worried about him. Sergey looked in my eyes, his face unreadable. And what do you wish from me, Private? I want to know whether Yuri is alive, sir. Whether he is alright. I said. My mouth was dry and my throat clenched as Sergey looked at me, an all too familiar anger building behind his eyes. You are aware that discussing our work here is not recommended, aren't you, Private? I had gone too far to back out now. I could only press on. Yes, sir, I am. Then, listen well to me, Mikhail Sidorov. Whether your friend is or isn't alive is of no concern to me or our task here. Our only job is to keep level 5 secure. That is what we are here to do, and I will gladly send every man in this base to their death if it means that task is carried out. Sergey's voice was getting louder and louder until he was shouting at the top of his lungs, spittle flying into my face. Completely unknowingly, I had touched on a subject which I should have never opened with him. Sir, I began, trying to apologize. Sergey wouldn't have it. What's down there can never come to the light of day. Do you understand? If your friend shot himself after what he heard there, it is a low price to pay. Never forget that. With that, he turned and stormed off. I might have made a huge mistake today. December 21st, 1958. If I never write again in this diary, know I have either killed myself or am too changed to ever write my memories down again. This morning, we received our orders for the day, as usual. Guard duty, maintenance or patrol. That's all I've ever done here. Not today though. The officer read down the list, reciting the names and duties for the first part of the day. I was always at the end of the list and only started paying attention towards the end of his monologue. Turgenev, guard duty, level 4, 0800. Kuznetsov, guard duty, level 4, 0800. Chernyshevsky, patrol, 1000. He suddenly stopped, just before my name. His eyes tightened as he squinted down on his list, as if surprised by what he read there. Then he spoke, in a strangled voice. Mikhail Sidorov. Report to level 5. The entry from December 21st is followed by several empty pages. This is what follows. Unknown date, 1958. If you find this, please get off the mountain. You may not make it, but if you do, take this diary and bring it to the army command, to the KGB, to anyone that will listen. They need to know what happened here. My heart sank when I heard the order consigning me to level 5. It took a second to truly hit me, the reality slowly settling in my mind. Sergey, it had to be him. He had remembered my inquiry into Yuri's fate and had made sure, either from cruelty or from some twisted sense of justice, that I would share my friend's fate, whatever it was. But there was nothing I could do now. I left for level 5 immediately. The officer on guard duty at the tunnel from level 4 looked at my printed orders and smiled sadly. Wait a while in the side room, son. I have to double check all level 5 postings with command. I'll just be a second. He waved vaguely to a small unlit side room before walking over to a telephone set in the wall and dialing a number. I walked over into the side chamber, resignedly. The room was dark, only lit by a thin sliver of light coming from the corridor outside and filled with dank air. There was another person waiting inside, standing silently in the corner. As I approached, I could slowly make out more features. The man seemed familiar, even in the dark. It looked like, Yuri, is that you? I asked incredulously. What are you doing here? Where have you been? Miguel? Yuri asked. I stared at my friend in shock. He had changed horribly in the few short days we had been parted. Where before he was a healthy, well-built man with an undying smile on his face, he was now hollow and frowning. Have you been discharged from level 5? You've been... I didn't get another word out. Yuri darted forward, slamming into me, one forearm pinning my neck to the wall. He thrust his face right in front of mine. Where are you going, Miguel? He hissed in a sharp whisper. Have you been posted to level 5? Yes! Sergey sent me here as a punishment for asking about you. Yuri swore beneath his breath. Fuck. Listen to me, Miguel. Don't listen to the screaming. Whatever you do, don't listen to it. If you can't take it anymore, do whatever you have to. Just get out of there. Fake an illness, insult the officer, and get taken to the prison wing. Whatever you need, just get out of there. There was a cough from the door. The officer stood there, uncertain as to what was happening. You have been cleared for level 5, Private Sidorov, he began tentatively. Yuri backed away from me. Remember, Miguel. Remember what I told you. Then he swept out of the room and out of sight. Everything alright, Private? The officer asked. Something the matter? No, sir, I answered finally, Yuri's cryptic warning still swirling through my head. Just talking with my friend. I walked past him and to the thick iron door separating me from level 5. It slid open slowly, revealing the room I was to guard until I was relieved. And the screaming hit me. I couldn't pay attention to anything but that sound. It was all-encompassing, a cacophony of agony, the sound of several men tortured beyond the limits of flesh and bone. I was no stranger to the sounds of pain after my time in the army, but none of it could compare to this. My eyes snapped to the source of the sound involuntarily. It was coming from the back of the massive room I had entered. The wall was solid rock, carved from the mountain itself. A small opening yawned dark at its base, seemingly a cave entrance that was blocked off after several meters by a pile of rubble and stone. A rock fall had sealed the cave shut. My head swam, and I leaned on a wall for support. I couldn't think, couldn't focus on anything but the echoing sound of men in horrible, never-ending pain. I was drowning in a dark pool inside my mind, with nothing to grab onto. Don't listen to the screaming. Yuri's word pulled me back into reality. I steeled myself. The screaming was still there, gnawing at my sanity. But I set myself against it. I would not fall to it. A man in a lab coat made to walk past me. I stepped in his path. He was a thin man with a bald head and the stubble of several days on his chin. Comrade, what is that thing? I asked him, pointing to the cave entrance. Where does it lead? He looked at me in confusion. Do you not know? Didn't anyone tell you? This is my first time on level 5. I don't know anything about this place. Please, I need to know. The researcher looked around, as if checking if no one was watching us. Then he stepped in close to me. There used to be a huge cave system beneath this mountain, he said, his voice low. The local tribe would report strange noises coming out of it, and every now and then people would disappear while on the mountain. So we sent a small unit of 5 to check the tunnels. What happened to them? Only one of them ever made it out. They found him 3 days later, wandering the wastes outside. He was beyond help, muttering to himself about the dark, blood, and things underneath his skin. When another unit went to find his comrades, they got all the way down here and found the cave-in. It seems the man blew a grenade while escaping and caused a rock fall that sealed the end of the caverns off. And the men inside? The men inside have been screaming ever since this place was found. Not a second of silence. In 5 years. The man stepped away from me and hurried away, obviously not wishing to continue talking. I swallowed nervously, my mouth suddenly dry and my throat tight. "So glad you could join us today, Private," came a voice from next to me. I turned and came face to face with Commander Sergei Yavantov. The man was smiling slightly, but that unceasing anger was still simmering in his eyes. "Sir, yes sir," I saluted, clenching my jaw in frustration. "Awaiting orders, sir." Sergei smiled. "There is not much to do for soldiers here, Private. Except wait and remain vigilant. You will stand guard at that post until you are relieved." He pointed at a small niche set in one of the walls of the room, barely large enough for a man to stand in it. "Sir, yes sir," I answered, grating my teeth. I walked over to my post and stood to attention in it. The screaming was still hammering at my ears and tearing at my mind. There were no words to it, and no halt, not even for those screaming to take a breath. There was no way it could have been so loud through the rocks cutting us off from the men. If it even was men. But somehow, it was drowning out everything else. I looked around the room to try and preoccupy myself with something else. It was a massive hallway, dozens of meters long and almost as many deep. There were many niches similar to mine around the walls, some occupied by dead-eyed soldiers, many others empty. The center of the room was filled with desks and elaborate equipment manned by researchers and scientists. I saw that almost all of them were wearing heavy hearing protection, drowning out the all-encompassing cacophony. They were working with complicated-looking electronic gear, the intent of which I couldn't begin to fathom. Right in front of the sealed cave entrance was a massive wheeled cannon. It was loaded and ready to fire, aiming straight at the pile of rubble separating us from whatever was inside there. Manning it were 5 soldiers in uniforms I didn't recognize, all with heavy ear protection. We were expendable. They were not. As my interest in the surroundings waned, the screaming returned, stronger than before. I couldn't think of anything but it. And the longer I listened, the more I became certain there was something more than human beneath it. An undertone no man's throat could ever utter. Whatever was in there, it wasn't altogether human. Time began to lose all meaning. How long was I standing there? Minutes? Hours? Days? I don't know. There was nothing to hold on to, nothing to compare the passage of time to. Only the crying of the trapped men. I would regain consciousness, confused as to what was happening and where I was. Only the walls of my post kept me upright as I leaned heavily on them. When I closed my eyes, I could still see the terrible cave and the barrier of rock between me and whatever was in there. I don't know how long I was on guard before Yuri's words pierced the veil on my thoughts. "If you can't take it anymore, do whatever you have to. Just get out of there." I wished to serve my country. I would gladly have laid down my life for it. But this was something I could not do. I had to get out of this room before I lost my mind. Slowly, almost theatrically, I keeled over and landed face down on the floor. I shut my eyes and went limp. "Medic!" Someone yelled, barely audible over the screams. The thud of boots hammered the floor as several men ran over to me and pushed me onto my back. I kept my eyes shut, feigning unconsciousness. "We need to get him to the medical wing," came a voice I didn't recognize from somewhere above me. "He may go into shock. Not everyone can handle this for too long." I felt arms grab me and pull me up. I was being dragged somewhere. I hoped it was towards the exit from level 5. The movement stopped suddenly. No! The voice was Sergei Yauntov's. It came from in front, from between me and the exit. Shit. Sir, this man is unconscious. This place might have been too much for him. We need to get him to a— No, comrade. This man is here as a disciplinary measure. And here he will stay, till he awakens. Take him to the prison room and put him in a cell. He will be safe there, till he awakens. Send for a medic to check on him if you wish. But sir, that is an order, Private. Understood, sir. I was being dragged again, but in a different direction. Panic rose within me. Not only would I remain on level 5, but I would be trapped in a prison cell at the mercy of Commander Yauntov and his twisted sense of justice. But if I awoke, he might guess I was only acting. If service on level 5 was his punishment for asking about Yuri, I didn't want to find out what the price for this would be. I was laid down on a cold stone slab. An iron door slammed somewhere nearby. Then, there was silence, broken only by the wailing of level 5. Time began to slip past me again. Minutes blended into hours. There was only the sound from outside. Suddenly, I was pulled back into reality. It took me a second to realize what had broken me out of my horrifying trance. Silence. Absolute silence. The screaming had stopped. There was a second of nothingness, as the world drew its breath. Klaxons and sirens wailed outside the door of my cell. The thump of boots echoed through the halls as soldiers took up positions. I leapt up, running over to the solid metal door of my room, beating on it with my fists.
Let me out! Let me out, damn you all!
There was no answer. Someone screamed in level 5. The same inhumane screech that had before come from within the cave. Except now, it was closer, more immediate, in the room outside. There was a gunshot, then another, and then a whole salvo. The ground shook as the massive cannon I had seen discharged a single time. The screaming grew in volume as more men joined in, but never more than a handful. One cry would die down in a wet gurgle, only for another to take its place. I backed away from the door and fell to the ground, hands clenched on my ears. Something heavy hit the door. A red puddle began spreading from beneath it. There was a crash of steel from outside, the agonized wail of heavy doors being ripped off their axes. The screaming grew distant, spreading upward through the facility. And silence fell on level 5. I have been here since then. I cannot open the cell door from inside. As far as I can tell, days have passed. Thirst and hunger torment me, but I have to hold on, in case I am ever rescued. I have to warn someone. I have to warn them about what happened on level 5. December 29th, 1958. I was trapped in my cell for 5 days. Hunger and cold took their toll on me. I would have died of dehydration, but there was a small, filthy toilet in the corner of my room. After a day, my thirst overcame my revulsion, and I drank from it greedily. The water only lasted 2 days, and thirst quickly added itself to my list of tormentors. The lights went out after several hours, as whatever happened to the base above destroyed the generators, plunging me into darkness. I was almost relieved, unable to see the dried red stain around the door. I was starving and freezing, but my real enemy was my own mind. I could still hear the carnage outside, echoing in my mind. The inhumane screaming, the desperate gunfire, the sounds of a whole military base unable to stop whatever had come out of that cave. When I heard the sound in the corridor outside, I thought I had to be hallucinating. I haven't heard anything but my own voice for days. I rolled over on the floor and ignored it. But then it came again. Footsteps, slow, wary, echoing down the abandoned hall. They were getting closer, heading right for my cell. I leapt to my feet, swaying as my head swam. There was nothing in my cell I could use as a weapon. I bared my fists, turning in the dark to where I thought the door was. Something grabbed hold of the heavy iron bar locking it, and it scraped loudly as it was drawn up. The door crashed open. A blinding light shone into my eyes. I cringed backwards, my illusions of putting up a fight gone in a rush of terror. I shrank backwards, raising my arms to protect my eyes. "Mikael, stay calm, it's me." It was Yuri's voice. The light swung downwards as I squinted at its source. Yuri stood in the cell door, one hand gripping a battery-powered light, the other holding a pistol. "Yuri, what are you doing here? I thought everyone was dead," I slurred. "Not everyone. I'm sorry it took so long, Mikael. I didn't know you were in the cell. I thought you died, like almost everyone else. Sergey the bastard only told us yesterday that you were locked up when it happened." "Water," I mumbled, the edges of my vision darkening. I fell to one knee. Yuri rushed over, pulling a canteen from his belt. "Here, drink. There's more up above." I grabbed the canteen and tore it open, wolfing down the water inside. I wanted to thank Yuri, to ask him 1,000 questions, but my body didn't allow it. Darkness folded in around me, and I felt myself falling. That was 2 days ago. When I awoke, I found myself in a mess hall on level 1. The survivors of whatever happened on level 5, some 50 soldiers in total, have holed up here. We have fires, food, and water. When I recovered, I immediately asked Yuri about what had happened to the base. "We don't even know," he answered, a flash of fear crossing his face. One moment, everything was normal. The next, people were screaming, Mikael. Then they dropped, blood at the mouth, and someone else would start. We tried killing whoever it took, but it would always jump to someone else. What? How is that possible? I don't know, Mikael. It shouldn't be. And yet, out of the 500 men on this base, there's only 50 alive now. And we only survived because we hit. Whatever took those men, it seems that, if it can see you, you're safe. Or at least, safer. What happened when everyone inside was dead? Yuri sighed. The last 4 men to be taken by them. They never stopped screaming. They ran into the wastes outside. We haven't seen them since. We sat in silence for a while. What happened to Sergey? I asked, finally. Yuri smiled, a flash of his old attitude warming his face for a second. He has been relieved of command, you could say. When it was all over, he appeared unharmed and tried to make us follow the screaming men out in the dark. We wouldn't have it. He shot old Lebedev before we could restrain him. Where is he now? In the other mess hall on this level. He hasn't answered any questions about what the hell happened and stays silent most of the time. Come along, I'll take you to him. We picked our way through the men lying and sitting around our makeshift shelter. Everyone was quiet. The loudest voice was a whisper. Even though these men had survived the horrors from level 5, something had died within them. Sergey lay in the corner of the second mess hall, his hands and legs bound. When we approached, he smiled mirthlessly. "Private Sidorov, it seems Yuri's hope of rescuing you was not as foolish as I thought. You're lucky to be alive." "As are you, Commander," I retorted, barely keeping my anger at bay. "Care to tell us what the hell is happening?" "Those are state secrets, Private. I can't tell you anything," Yuri snorted. "You've already failed the Union, Sergei. Whatever we were here to guard, it escaped. Best you tell us what it was, and maybe we can salvage something from the situation." The former commander looked at Yuri dolefully. "I did what was in my power to guarantee the safety of this facility. There was nothing more I could have done." Yuri swore savagely and spat at the ground at Sergei's feet before turning around and stalking off. I followed after him. "What's our next move, Yuri?" I asked once I caught up to him. "We have to do something. We have to get to Army Command to warn them. The whole area needs to get locked down as soon as possible." "Come outside with me, Mikhail." I followed my friend, confused as to what he intended by this. As we walked through the abandoned base and out into the freezing night, I realized what he wished for me to witness. From somewhere, out in the dark, the faint sound of men screaming carried to my ears. They're still out there, Mikhail. Somewhere. We've sent out patrols trying to find them. They either return with no information, or they don't return at all. So, what does that mean for us? We don't know where they are. We don't have the gear to take the trek to reach civilization. For all purposes, we're trapped here. January 2nd, 1959. We have remained camped in the remainder of level 1. Sergei still hasn't talked. 3 men didn't return from patrol today. January 7th, 1959. 5 more men have gone missing on patrol since my last entry. Food and water are still in supply, but we're running out of cigarettes. January 12th, 1959. 7 more men are dead. Sergei remains silent. There has been talk among the survivors of executing him. January 19th, 1959. There is little reason for me to continue this diary, other than keeping track of our losses. 12 more men have been lost to the Screaming Ones. Sergei hasn't spoken in 3 days. No more cigarettes. January 25th, 1959. Today, the screaming came closer to our base than ever before. All the way to the ruined entry gate. We lay low, gripping rifles in terror, mumbling prayers and curses. Thank God, it passed after half an hour, moving somewhere down the mountain. 4 men went to follow it, swearing to kill the screaming men from a range. They haven't returned. January 28th, 1959. Today, Sergei finally talked. We haven't fed him in days and only gave him small amounts of water. Finally, he cracked and agreed to talk to us. He never pleaded, never begged. He is still Sergei, angry, prideful, utilitarian. But now we know a bit about what we're dealing with here. We never opened the cave, not once in 5 years, he told us through parched lips. The best scanning equipment in all of the Union was used to give us some idea what was happening on the other side of the rockfall. Our best guess was the 4 trapped men were just standing there for 5 years, standing there, screaming. And no one ever tried to open the cave? A soldier growled. Would you have? We didn't know what was in there. What was in those soldiers? We still don't, even now. And how did they get outside? I demanded. The cave is still sealed. How could they escape? Your guess is as good as mine, Private Sidorov. Sergei smiled, his head lolling. Maybe they were gathering strength. Maybe they were biding their time. Maybe, given 5 years of doing nothing, they could pass through the rock with the same ease they passed through flesh. Whatever happened to the man in this base, it only happened to those in a direct line of sight from the screaming ones, said Yuri. Whatever way it moved outside the cave, it doesn't seem it can do it again. That's how we all survived after all. Sergei grinned at Yuri. By hiding like cowards. Yuri lashed out, fast as a snake. Sergei's head snapped back and blood spouted from his burst lip. Despite everything, he kept on grinning. And what do you plan to do now, Private Ivanovich? Our only chance was to follow and kill those things. And instead, you turned on me. The soldiers around him started to disperse with mutters of disgust. It was clear we would get no more from our former commander. Grudgingly, I gave him a canteen of water. It seems we will all die here. Either the screaming ones find us, or we die out there in the snow, one by one. If anyone finds this diary, God be with you, for he has abandoned us. January 30th, 1959. 5 more men down. We are now only 14. Yuri, thankfully, among them. Sergei still lives and has been moved to our mess hall to be better guarded. February 1st, 1959. May God have mercy on my soul. Today's events will haunt me till the day I die. It was approaching nightfall when a patrol, the last 2 men brave enough to volunteer to search the mountain, ran into our shelter. The sentries leapt up, rifles raised, expecting trouble. "There's people! People on the mountain!" one of the scouts yelled. I sprang to my feet and ran over to them. Yuri close behind. "Who? Where?" I demanded. "On the slope. We counted 9. They're setting up camp as we speak." The remaining soldiers gathered around the patrol. "Are they military?" Yuri asked. "Could they have radios? Can we contact command?" "No, they're civilians. Hiking expedition, it seems," the patrolman answered. A dejected quiet fell on the room. Our hopes, so quickly raised, were crushed just as fast. A single voice broke the silence. Sergei's. "Bait." We looked over at him, confused. "What are you talking about, you son of a bitch?" asked one of the survivors. "What do you mean bait?" "Those people on the mountain. The things in the screaming men don't know we're here, and so they haven't come for us. But they will see those hikers. They will come for them, and that gives us an advantage. We know what they're going to do." Yuri walked over to the bound commander. "What are you proposing? Even if they get to the hikers, we can't kill them without exposing ourselves." "You're sitting on a military base worth of weapons and explosives, Ivanovich. Outside, there's a mountain covered in snow. We get out there, we prime the slope with explosives. We wait and hide. When the things come for the hikers, we wait till they're screaming, and then we drop the slope on them. If the avalanche doesn't kill them, we will finish them off before they know what hit them." Yuri was quiet for a second. "Suppose we did all this," he said at last. "Suppose we manage to cause an avalanche, but the things survive. How do we know we'll be able to kill them? We tried and failed when they broke free." "It's either this, or you stay here and die slowly, one by one. Your choice." There was a second of silence. Then Yuri nodded If we are to go down, we go down fighting. Around them, the survivors were rising to their feet and muttering in agreement. A fire in their eyes that had been extinguished for a month had been rekindled. They had intent. They had hope. One more thing, added Sergei, lifting his bound hands. Free me. Yuri hesitated for a second. Then he stepped forward, drew his knife, and cut Sergei's bonds. Everything happened quickly after that. We gathered explosives from the armory, grenades, and demolition charges, and stalked out into the night. The hikers had pitched their tent under the mountain. A dull glow came from inside, the light of a lamp illuminating it from within. The scream still came, faint on the air. Maybe the campers didn't hear them. Maybe they mistook them for the howling of the wind. Whatever it was, they stayed inside their tent. Our small group crept along the mountain above, anxious in the dark. Every movement in the black night was full of terror. It took us only a few minutes to plant the explosives on the slopes above the tent. Having prepared our trap, we stalked away, taking cover in a tree line about a kilometer away from the camp. And then we waited. For several hours, we sat in the cold, freezing and terrified. Sergei held the detonator, having assumed command by force of his expertise and some residual authority. It seemed like an eternity of waiting, but then it finally came. The moment we had been dreading. The screams on the wind got closer and louder, approaching the tent. We saw the things coming. 4 specks of black on the white snow, running down the mountain towards the hikers. There was a commotion in the tent, shadows moving inside in panic. As one, the voices on the wind went silent. The running bodies fell limp in the snow. And 4 fresh screams arose from the camp. We froze. We had been awaiting this moment anxiously for hours. But when it came at last, we still hesitated.
Blow the slope! Do it, Sergei!
Yelled Yuri, breaking our horrified trance. Our commander smiled cruelly and hit the detonator. There was a loud crack and a boom, like thunder in the distance. A flash of flame illuminated the slope, casting it in sharp-cut shadow and light. I covered my ears. There was a rumble that echoed across the mountain. For a second, the world held still. Then, the whole slope above the tent began shifting, the vibrations setting off an unstoppable chain of motion. Tons of snow were moving, sliding down with an unsettling groaning sound. The mass gained speed and struck the tent with horrible force. Silence fell on the mountain. Slowly, we picked ourselves up. The tension was palpable. We waited with bated breath. Did it work? I said finally, my voice hoarse. No one answered for a second, listening intently. Then Yuri whispered an answer. I think it did, he said. We should go check. A horrified scream, louder than any before, cut through the night. My heart sank, a chill running down my spine. Yuri swore, and Sergei drew his pistol. Looks like we're not done here yet, soldiers. Get ready. The tent bulged and then split as someone tore it open from the inside. Figures streamed out, running towards our tree line. They weren't screaming. They weren't taken. But my heart sank as the last 4 shapes emerged from the ruined shelter. 4 loud screams sounded across the mountainside once again. The things staggered through the snow, limbs uncoordinated, as if whatever force gave the body's movement and strength was not used to these new hosts. But they were moving fast, following the fleeing hikers and heading straight for us. "Prepare to fire," Sergey commanded, his voice cold as iron. "If it moves, kill it." My surviving comrades kneeled in the snow, rifles trained on the incoming figures. With the crack of gunfire, we fired our first volley. We aimed with all the skill we had, trying desperately to make sure the hikers who hadn't yet been taken wouldn't die in our crossfire. One of the screaming ones went down, and I cheered, only to curse in fear as his cry of insane pain was raised up by another of the fleeing hikers. Were these things invincible? Would death only make them leap to a fresh target? Another volley set my ears ringing, and 2 more bodies fell to the ground. Their screams were silenced only for a second before a pair of the fleeing hikers stumbled, twitched, and took up the agonized cry. Panic spread through our group like wildfire. Discipline collapsed. The screaming men were getting closer, our gunfire doing nothing to stop their advance. First one, then 2 soldiers turned and fled into the forest. Then they were all running, terror seizing our minds in a horrible grip. We ran through the midnight forest, the screams of the following things echoing around us. I cried as the ground below me suddenly fell away and I tumbled down a small slope. A stream ran at its bottom, and I fell straight into it, ice-cold tendrils immediately spreading through my body. My comrades ran after me, some falling as I had, some keeping their footing. Sergey stood beside me and lifted me up. "What do we do?" I said desperately, panic threatening to overwhelm me again. Sergey didn't have time to answer. Over the lip of the slope we had fallen down, 4 shapes appeared. Their screams were deafening. The next moments are only a blur in my memory. I remember desperate gunfire as the 4 slavering figures ran among us, their screaming mixing with our own cries of fear and confusion. The corruption spread quickly, men falling dead, others taking up their inhumane shout. One memory is clear as glass in my mind. A screaming figure, a soldier I had known as Igor Pashenko, staggered towards me, his mouth open in a disfiguring grimace. I stumbled backwards, tripping on a prone body and falling to the ground. I would have died. I should have died. But then Sergey jumped in front of me. He never panicked. He may have been cruel, a bastard and a murderer, but he never panicked. As Pashenko screamed at him, Sergey aimed his pistol and began firing. His aim was flawless. 1 bullet, 2, 3, almost a whole magazine dumped into Pashenko's chest. All but 1 shot. As the soldier fell to the ground and whatever force had moved his muscles fled to find a new host, Sergey put the gun under his own jaw and fired. Then Yuri was picking me up. "Run, Mikhail! Run! Back to the base!" I didn't question his command, didn't ask why we would go back there. I fled, Yuri beside me, as the screaming tore through the remainder of our group. We had gotten away, but the things were soon in pursuit. As we staggered through the snow, we could hear them behind, their agonized cries slowly gaining on us. My legs burned, weakness and cold sapping my strength. I would have given up and laid down, waiting for death, if Yuri hadn't kept me going. We dashed through the ruined gate of our former base, the things some 100 meters behind. The darkness in the ruins was absolute, and we would have soon been lost if Yuri hadn't quickly found a battery-powered light. We ran downwards through the levels of the base, the screaming now closing in behind. If they caught sight of us, this close, it would be the end. Where are we going? I panted, tears of fear and exhaustion streaming down my face. We're trapped down here. Yuri's face was set in stone. We can't kill them, Mikhail, he answered. If that avalanche and all that gunfire we hit them with couldn't do it, I don't know what will. Then, what are we going to do? He glanced over at me for a second as we fled through the dark. Then he raised his free hand, grasped in it, were 2 grenades. One of these opens the caves on level 5. I lure them inside, and I hide. Once they followed me, I'll sprint out. You have to be ready, Miguel. The second I'm out of that cave, you blow the entrance. We'll cause another rockfall. We will trap them again, I realized. We will seal the cave off. Exactly. Yuri smiled grimly. He thrust one of the grenades at my chest, and I took it in shaking hands. We tore into level 5. The ground was strewn with corpses, the dead left in the wake of the Screaming One's escape, lying in heaps around us. Our pursuers weren't far behind. I could hear their thudding footsteps, their terrible cries. We were running out of time. Yuri sprinted towards the pile of rubble sealing off the caves. "Hide, quickly!" he called out. I leapt to the side of the room, taking cover behind an overturned work table. A dead body lay there, its eyes open in death, a grimace of shock and pain set on his face forever. A loud bang shook the whole level as Yuri blasted his way into the caves. The walls groaned ominously, their structure damaged, thousands of tons of rocks above us pressing down with terrible pressure. The Screaming Ones were approaching. Their cries were deafening. Yuri's light went dark as he pushed deeper into the unseen cave. There was a quiet thud as he laid down. The bait was set. We didn't have to wait long. The cries of the things in pursuit rose in a crescendo as they crashed onto level 5. They didn't stop and dived straight into the caverns, following the light. I leapt from behind the table and ran to the cave entrance. A grenade pin clicked on the ground as I pulled it out, gripping the safety lever in sweaty hands. I waited, my heart thudding, my breath coming in short gasps. Desperation began building inside me as I realized that something must have gone horribly wrong. Yuri wasn't coming out. How long could I wait? How long did I have? Suddenly, my friend's voice cut through the cacophony of pain, echoing from the black cavern.
Blow the entrance, Miguel! Do it now!
He yelled from the dark. I couldn't. I wouldn't. My friend was in there, and I couldn't consign him to his death sentence. Yuri! I screamed desperately. I can't! My friend limped into view, staggering around a corner of the passage. 4 shapes leapt up behind him, all attention on Yuri. He hadn't been able to hide from them. We were out of time, out of options.
Do it, Miguel! You have to!
He couldn't get any further. I saw one of the pursuing bodies collapse. Yuri twitched, staggered, and fell. Tears blinded me. I released the safety lever and leapt back behind cover. There was a flash of light and a deafening boom. The screaming was drowned out. The walls shook and the cave collapsed. Tons of rock smashed down, shattering on the ground. A cloud of dust sprang up, setting my lungs on fire. I peered through it with watering eyes. The cave was sealed. A wall of rock had fallen in its entrance, blocking it off. I fell to the ground and wept for my lost friend. No dead soldiers are mentioned in the old investigations of the Dyatlov Pass incident. I presume whatever arm of the government sent my father to that unknown base had gotten there first, drawn my reports of missing hikers, and made sure their involvement would never be found out. In 2019, the Russian government announced it was opening a new investigation of the Dyatlov Pass incident. The conclusion was that the accident was caused by an avalanche. I guess they're not completely wrong, or not outright lying. I think it was this reminder of his past that sent my grandfather over the edge, pushing repressed memories into his mind. I can't help but wonder if his last written words were true. Or are they still in the caves? I wonder if someone out there in the icy Russian waste, buried beneath the Ural Mountains, 4 men, one of them a hero and my grandfather's long-lost friend, are screaming to this day. This is the last entry in my grandfather's journal, except for those last words. God, help us. They're still out there.
Behind every normal family is a secret that could destroy it. Tonight, we unearth the dark truths buried behind closed doors. Let's dive in.
I married a man who washed his hands, like he was trying to erase a stain no one else could see. Water had always calmed me. The sink in our kitchen faced a narrow window, and on mornings when the rain slid down the glass in soft vertical lines, I would stand there with my coffee and pretend the world was rinsing itself clean. Caleb Wright liked those mornings too, he said. Rain made him feel sober in a way sunlight never could. He said it quietly, like a confession he didn't want absolved. I noticed the hands first, not the way they touched me. Those were careful, reverent even, but the way he washed them. He scrubbed past the knuckles, under the nails, wrists raw and pink. He'd dry them with paper towels instead of cloth, as if fabric might remember. When I teased him about it, he smiled and said, "Old habits, 12 years sober." He liked to say 12 years was a cathedral number. You could build a life under it and call it holy. I met Caleb at church, of course. He sat 2 pews behind me the first Sunday, sang without raising his voice, and bowed his head with a concentration that felt private. Afterward, he waited while people drifted away, then asked if I wanted coffee. He didn't touch the sugar packets. He watched me stir mine and smiled like it was a small miracle. We were engaged within a year. The ring felt heavier than it looked, a simple band that caught the light and made my finger look newly invented. My friends said I'd found a good man. My mother said he had kind eyes. The pastor said redemption was visible on him, like a sheen you only saw if you knew how to look. Sometimes in photographs, there was something else, a blur in the background, a shape like a shadow thrown by an object, not in the frame. I blamed the phone camera. I blamed my nerves. Caleb ran a logistics firm downtown, steel and glass, the kind of place where water fell in engineered sheets down the lobby wall. When I visited him at work, I'd sit in the atrium and watch the cascade. The way the water broke into white noise and hid conversations. He'd come down with a smile that was practiced but sincere, and he'd hold my elbow instead of my hand. "Slippery," he'd say, always careful. At night, he slept lightly. He'd wake before dawn, breathing like he'd been running. Once I reached for him and felt his body stiffen, a plank under my palm. "Sorry," he whispered, already sitting up. "Dream, I didn't press." Love can be a discipline. You learn what not to touch. The first time I saw the car, it was in a reflection. We were at a charity gala, one of those rooms where the wine glasses chime against each other, like wind chimes in a storm. I was standing near a mirrored column, watching Caleb talk to a donor, when the glass behind him went dark. Not shadow dark, road dark. A stretch of black asphalt cut by yellow lines. For a second, headlights bloomed, white and blinding, and then I blinked. The reflection was normal again. My face flushed, Caleb laughing at something, the donor's hand on his arm. "You okay?" Caleb asked later when we were in the car. Rain tapped the windshield, a polite, persistent knocking. "Just tired," I said. He nodded. His hands were tight on the wheel. The wipers beat a steady time. He didn't turn on the radio. When I started planning the wedding, water threaded itself through everything. The venue had a fountain. The florist suggested calla lilies that liked damp soil. I dreamed of rain the night before, not as a disaster, but as a baptism. In the dreams, I was always dry. Caleb volunteered at recovery meetings on Thursdays. He came home smelling like old coffee and antiseptic, a scent that clung to him until he showered. He would stand under the water longer than necessary, eyes closed, lips moving without sound. Sometimes, I pressed my ear to the bathroom door and listened to the rush, the way it filled the apartment and erased edges. Once, after he'd been in there nearly an hour, I knocked. The water shut off abruptly. Silence. "I'm fine," he called. His voice was hoarse. When he came out, his skin was mottled, goose of flesh raised. He kissed my forehead and tasted like nothing at all. "Do you ever think about before?" I asked him that night, my head on his chest, listening to his heart slow. "Every day," he said, without hesitation. "That's how I stay sober." I waited for more. He didn't offer it. The shadow followed us into joy at our engagement party, as people clinked glasses and made jokes about speeches and seating charts. I saw it again, a faint silhouette at the edge of the room, shaped like a crumpled car. It hovered near the wall, where the paint met the floor. When I looked directly at it, it thinned, like smoke caught in a draft. When I looked away, it gathered. I started to catalog my senses, as if I were inventorying a crime scene. The smell of citrus cleaner at church, the grit of sugar on my tongue, the sound of tires on wet pavement outside our bedroom window at night, my own pulse, loud in my ears. "Nat," Caleb said, using the nickname he knew I loved. "You're miles away." "Just thinking," I said, I could have said anything. Centerpieces, guest lists. The way the world felt thinner lately, like paper soaked too long. "Us," I said. He smiled, relief loosening his shoulders. He reached for my hand, then hesitated, wiped his palm on his slacks, and took it. The first crack in the story came from a woman with a soft voice and sharp eyes. Her name was Marisol, and she ran the church's food pantry. We were stacking cans one Saturday when she asked how I'd met Caleb. "At church," I said. She nodded. "He's been here a long time, 12 years, I said. Proud, like it was my number, too. Her hands paused. "That's right," she said, after a beat. 12. There was something in the way she said it, like a door closing quietly. That night, I searched his name online. I told myself it was normal. Due diligence. There were articles about his company, photos of him cutting ribbons and shaking hands. Then, on the second page, a PDF from a local paper's archive. The headline was old-fashioned, the font blocky, head-on collision claims 2 lives. I didn't click it. Not yet. My chest felt full of water, pressure building. Caleb came home with groceries. He kissed me, set the bags down, went to wash his hands. I watched him from the couch, the way his shoulders rose and fell. The sink ran. The window over it showed the night, rain blurring the streetlights into halos. "Do you trust me?" he asked without turning around. "Yes," I said. The word felt like a stone dropped into a well. The dream came back worse after that. Headlights, closer. A woman's face at the wheel, mouth open in a soundless O. A baby seat in the back, a blanket folded wrong. The impact was always just before waking, my body jolting, like I'd been pushed. I clicked the PDF the next morning, while Caleb was at work. The names were there, dates, a mugshot of a younger man who looked like Caleb if you stripped away 12 years of careful living. The article said alcohol was involved. It said prison. It said 6 years. It said Elena Rodriguez, 22, and her infant daughter. I closed the laptop and went to the sink. I washed my hands until they hurt. When Caleb came home, I didn't tell him I knew. Not yet. Knowledge is a weight. You learn how to carry it before you show it. We went to see the venue that weekend. It was by a river, the water moving fast and brown from rain. The coordinator talked about ceremony flow and cocktail hour. I watched Caleb's reflection in the glass doors. Behind him, for just a second, the river turned to road. "Are you sure?" I asked him as we stood by the water. "About everything." He looked at me, really looked, like he was measuring the distance between us. "I've never been more sure of anything," he said. I wanted to scream. I wanted him to say it himself. Confession is a bridge. You don't know if it will hold until someone steps onto it. The shadow grew bolder after that. It slid into photographs, into mirrors, into the space behind Caleb when he laughed. It never touched him. It hovered, patient. At night, I started hearing water where there was none, a drip that wasn't the faucet, a rush like a distant shower. I'd get up and check, my bare feet cold on the tile. Everything would be dry. I went back to the article. I read about Elena Rodriguez. I found her obituary, a smiling photo, hair pulled back, a baby on her hip. She liked the beach. She worked at a bakery. There were comments from family, from strangers gone too soon. Prayers. I imagined her hands, flour, dusted. Her steering wheel, warm from the sun. The rain that night, slicking the road. "Nat," Caleb said one evening, standing in the doorway of the bathroom while I brushed my teeth. "If there was something you needed to know, would you want me to tell you?" My mouth was full of foam. I spit, rinsed. The water ran clear. "Yes," I said. He nodded once. He didn't speak. The week before the wedding, the rain came down in sheets. The river swelled. The news showed footage of flooded streets. Cars stalled, headlights like eyes above the waterline. I dreamed I was in the passenger seat. I dreamed my hands were not on the wheel. The night before the rehearsal, I found him in the kitchen at 3 a.m., hands in the sink, water blasting. His shoulders shook. "Caleb," I said. He turned, water dripping from his wrists to the floor. His face was wrecked, the careful lines undone. "I can't," he said. "I can't do this." I waited. The apartment hummed around us. The fridge kicked on. Somewhere outside, tires hissed on wet asphalt. "I killed them," he said. The words fell heavy, undeniable. I was drunk. I crossed the line. I killed a woman and her baby. I thought of Elena Rodriguez, of her hands, of water and road. "I went to prison," he said. "I got sober. I tried to be better. I tried to make it mean something. Why didn't you tell me?" My voice sounded far away. "I was afraid," he said, "that you'd see me and only see that night." I looked at him, really looked. The man I loved. The man who washed his hands raw. The shadow pooled at his feet, darker now, shaped unmistakably like wreckage. "I see you," I said, and didn't know which version I meant. We didn't sleep. Dawn came gray and wet. At the church, the fountain burbled, cheerful and wrong. Guests arrived with umbrellas, shaking water onto the floor. In the bathroom, in my dress, I stared at myself in the mirror. Behind me, faint but present, the road stretched on. Headlights bloomed. "Do you want to go through with this?" the pastor asked, gentle. I thought of forgiveness, of atonement, of the weight of an unconfessed sin now confessed. Heavy still. "Yes," I said, or maybe I said no. The water was loud. When the doors opened, I walked. Caleb waited at the front, eyes shining. As I reached him, the shadow stepped forward too between us, solid at last. I smelled rain. I heard water. As we stood there, vows unspoken, I saw Elena Rodriguez in the reflection of the polished floor, her face calm, watching. The river outside surged somewhere. Tires hissed on wet pavement. Caleb reached for my hand. His palm was wet. I didn't pull away. I didn't lean in. The water kept running. The first thing I noticed was the heat too, much of it for a house that had been cold all day. Like the fire had learned how to breathe and was doing it just for me. The power had been flickering since noon, the Texas freeze pressing its face against every window, whitening the glass, sealing us inside like a jar. I dragged a chair close to the fireplace and wrapped myself in a quilt that smelled faintly of cedar and the detergent my grandmother used for decades, the kind that lingered even after she was gone. The flames threw shadows that crawled along the walls, stretching family photos into shapes I didn't recognize. I kept thinking I heard ice crack outside, trees snapping under their own weight, but sometimes it was just the fire settling. Sometimes it was the house. My father sat across from me, elbows on his knees, hands clasped like he was bracing for prayer. He'd been quiet all evening, not his usual distracted quiet. This was heavier, like something had finally decided to sit down in his chest and wasn't planning to move. "She wouldn't want you knowing this," he said, not looking at me. I watched the fire instead. "Then why tell me?" He rubbed his palms together, slow, methodical. "Because she's gone, and because things don't stay buried the way we think they do." Outside, the wind shoved against the siding. The lights dimmed, brightened, dimmed again. I thought about my grandmother, Dorothy Dottie Sterling, the woman who baked pies with latticed crusts, so neat they looked measured, who hummed hymns while washing dishes, who smelled like talcum powder in old books. Sweet, that was the word everyone used. Sweet Dottie, preacher's wife, preacher's daughter before that. The kind of woman you trusted with keys, with children, with secrets. My father finally looked up. His eyes were red, but dry. "She ran away in 1968. I laughed before I could stop myself. It came out wrong sharp, brittle. "Dad, she barely drove. She used to panic at left turns. That was after," he said. "That was what survived." The fire popped. A spark leapt, died. He told me to listen, so I did. And as he spoke, the room around me softened, the edges blurring like I was watching something old projected onto smoke. She wasn't Dottie yet, not really. She was Dorothy Sterling, preacher's daughter, Indiana farm girl with dirt under her nails, and a Bible always within reach whether she wanted it or not. Reverend Silas Sterling believed in order the way other men believed in oxygen. He believed the world was a wild thing that needed breaking, and his daughter was no exception. My father's voice stayed steady, but I could hear the strain in the pauses. He said she met him at a gas station just outside town. He said his name was Jax Mitchell, though back then he answered to anything said with enough confidence. A hoodlum, the police later called him. A drifter, trouble with a smile that looked practiced. I saw him without trying, leaning against a rusted pump, cigarette tucked behind his ear, hair too long for the times, eyes that didn't settle. My father said, she said, that when he looked at her, it felt like being seen through, not judged, measured. The firelight flickered, and for a second, the room smelled like gasoline instead of cedar. She told me he made her feel awake, my father said. Said everything before him felt like sleepwalking. I pulled the quilt tighter. The house creaked. Somewhere down the hall, a pipe knocked, then went quiet. The story slid forward, unstoppable. They left in the middle of the night. No note, no prayer, just a borrowed car, and the kind of certainty that only exists before consequences show up. Indiana fell away behind them, cornfields dissolving into highways. the radio crackling between stations. My grandmother, Dorothy, kept expecting God to reach down and flip the car, or for her father's voice to boom from the clouds, calling her back. Neither happened. That scared her more than punishment would have. They crossed state lines like it was nothing. Ohio, Kentucky, Illinois. The world got wider. Jax laughed a lot, drummed his fingers on the steering wheel, told stories that bent at the edges. Sometimes she believed him. Sometimes she watched his hands and wondered what they'd already done. My father swallowed. The police caught up to them outside Springfield. The lights flickered again, harder this time. For a breathless second, everything went dark. Then the generator kicked in with a low groan, the fire flaring brighter as if pleased to be needed. There was a trooper, he said. Routine stop. Broken taillight. I felt my pulse in my throat, the fire's warmth pressed against my shins. Too hot now. In my mind, the road stretched empty and gray. Winter. Bare trees lining the shoulders like witnesses. The trooper's hand rested near his holster. Jack smiled. Dorothy watched his jaw tighten, a muscle jumping like it was trying to escape. She didn't know when the gun came out. She knew the sound. A crack that split the air open. The trooper staggered back, surprise frozen on his face, then fell wrong, like a puppet dropped by a careless child. After that, everything ran. Illinois blurred into a shaking ribbon of asphalt. Sirens wailed, a sound that crawled under the skin and stayed there. Jax drove like the road owed him something. Tires screaming around curves, fields whipping past. Dorothy's hands were numb. She tasted blood where she'd bitten her lip without realizing. He told her not to look back, my father said softly. She did anyway. The house sighed around us. I imagined red and blue lights staining the night, cutting through corn stubble and frost. I imagined my grandmother's face then. Not the soft one from memory, but sharp, desperate, eyes too bright, mouth set hard. The double-sided woman I'd never been allowed to meet. The chase ended in gunfire. A stand of trees. Orders shouted. Jack stepping out of the car with his hands, half raised, half ready. The shots came fast, too fast to think. He went down in the dirt he'd never planned to stay in. Dorothy screamed. Or maybe she didn't. Trauma edits things strangely. What mattered was that when it was over, she was alive. Bloody, shaking, and alone. She told them he kidnapped her, my father said. Said she was scared that she didn't know what he'd done. She cried. She prayed. She survived. The words sat between us, ugly and bright. Survived. Outside, something cracked. Wood splitting under ice. I flinched, heart racing. The story had reached its edge, but it didn't stop there. It never really does. They believed her. Why wouldn't they? Preacher's daughter. Soft voice. Eyes red with tears that came easily by then. She went home. She folded herself back into the shape expected of her. Married, had children, baked pies, learned to flinch at sirens and hide it well. She never told anyone, my father said. Not your mom, not me. I found out because of a box. I looked at him. What box? He hesitated. The fire snapped. After she died, I was cleaning out the attic. There was a lockbox tucked behind the insulation. Inside were newspaper clippings, police reports, and a ring. My breath caught. A ring? Plain, cheap, men's. He met my eyes. She kept it. The room felt smaller. The heat pressed in. I thought about my grandmother's hands, always busy, always steady. I thought about how she'd sometimes stare out the window when the world went quiet, like she was listening for something far away. Dad, I said, and my voice sounded thin to my own ears. Why tell me now? He looked tired, older than he had an hour ago. Because during the freeze, when the power went out, I found her sitting by the fireplace in the dark. This was years ago. She thought I was Silas. She begged me not to send her back. The fire shifted, and for a moment the shadows on the wall looked like running figures. My skin prickled. She called me Jax, he finished. We sat with that. The house groaned. The generator hummed. The storm pressed closer, as if curious. Later, when he went to bed, I stayed by the fire. The story had lodged itself somewhere behind my eyes, playing on a loop. I kept seeing that ring hidden away, a small circle of metal anchoring a lie that had held for decades. The wind howled. Snow hissed against the windows. I told myself stories about inheritance, about trauma echoing through families. I told myself this was just history, just a secret finally told. The fire popped again, loud enough to make me jump. In the brief flare of light, I thought I saw someone standing at the edge of the room, hands half raised, smiling like he'd practiced it. When the flames settled, there was only the chair, empty, quilt, slumped like a shedskin. I stayed there until dawn, listening to the house breathe, wondering what survives us, and what waits for the heat to come back. The first message came at 2:14 a.m., and my mouth went dry, metallic, like I'd bitten down on a coin. Sarah, it's Chloe. I think you're the only one who remembers me the way I really was. The phone felt heavier than it should have, a dead weight pressing into my palm. I sat up in bed, careful not to wake my husband. His breathing stayed even, oblivious. The room smelled faintly of detergent and the stale sweetness of the candle I'd blown out hours earlier. Everything was normal. That was what scared me most. I typed, deleted, typed again. I remember. The reply came instantly. Can we meet? I stared at the screen until the letters blurred. Somewhere outside, a freight train groaned, the sound stretching low and mournful across the dark fields. It dragged something loose in my chest with it. Yes, I wrote. Tell me where. We grew up in a Missouri town that barely existed. One stoplight, one grocery store, a post office that closed for lunch and never quite reopened on time. Dust settled into everything. Summers smelled like hot asphalt, and cut grass left too long in the sun. Chloe Henderson lived 3 blocks from me in a narrow house that always looked finished from a distance and wrong up close. The siding was freshly painted, but the porch boards sagged unevenly. The windows were spotless, yet the curtains never moved, even with the windows cracked. Her parents, Arthur and Martha Vance, were old in a way that had nothing to do with age. Arthur hummed constantly, the same 3 notes over and over, low and tuneless. I used to think it was a habit, something men did when they were bored. Later I understood it was a shield. Martha smiled too quickly, as if responding to a cue. Only she could hear. Her hands were always busy, folding towels that were already folded, straightening picture frames that were already straight. Every clock in the house showed the same time, 3:18 a.m. Kitchen, living room, hallway. They ticked, but the hands never moved. Chloe was homeschooled. That was what people said, with a tone that implied explanation enough. When she came outside, she sat on the steps with me, our shoulders touching. She laughed in short bursts, like she was rationing it. Sometimes Arthur would call her name from inside. When he did, his humming stopped. Chloe's body would go rigid for half a second before she stood. He doesn't like yelling, she told me once. Says it echoes. The house smelled like boiled cabbage and old books. The air felt thick, padded, like sound couldn't travel properly inside. When I slept over, only once, I woke in the night to that humming through the walls, steady and insistent, drowning out something else. I told myself it was the pipes. That summer, we rode our bikes to the edge of town where the fields open wide. We lay in the grass and stared up at the sky, cicadas drilling into the heat. I dream about a store, Chloe said suddenly. It's huge, no windows, the sound in there. It makes my teeth hurt. What kind of store? I asked. She hesitated. One where everything is too bright, rows and rows of faces staring back at you. Plastic, smiling. I laughed it off. Sounds awful. She didn't laugh with me. The morning the FBI came, the air felt thin, like it might tear. Engines growled outside, doors slammed. My mother swore under her breath and told me to stay inside. I didn't. 3 black SUVs crowded the street in front of the Vance house. Men and women in dark jackets moved with clipped efficiency. The yellow letters on their backs looked unreal, like props. Arthur stepped onto the porch with his hands already raised. His humming was louder than usual, those same 3 notes vibrating in my ears. Martha stood behind him, gripping Chloe's shoulders, so hard her fingers dug into fabric and skin. Chloe looked at me, her mouth opened. Sarah, that was it. Agent surged forward. Martha screamed, a raw sound that didn't seem to belong to a person. Chloe stumbled as they pulled her away, her shoes scraping wood. The world felt washed out, edges too sharp. Cameras appeared from nowhere. Neighbors clustered, whispering. Someone said kidnapped, and the words slid off me without sticking. I remember Arthur on his knees, still humming, eyes closed like he was praying. I remember Martha fighting until they dragged her away, her cardigan slipping off one shoulder. I remember Chloe reaching back once, fingers stretching for empty air. They talked to me later twice, once at our kitchen table, once in a windowless room that smelled like carpet cleaner. They asked what Chloe said, how she acted, what I'd noticed. I told them about the stopped clocks, the humming, the dreams. The woman with the scar on her jaw nodded like each piece fit somewhere ugly and complete. They explained it carefully. Chloe hadn't been Chloe, not at first. She'd been taken from an Oklahoma Walmart 7 years earlier. A bathroom trip, a moment, a man who knew where the toys were. Arthur and Martha's daughter had died the year before. An accident. Martha had tried to kill herself twice. Arthur had decided that taking a child would save them all. They changed names, moved states, built a life that looked almost right if you didn't stare too long. Chloe was sent back to a family she couldn't remember. Arthur and Martha went to prison. Their house emptied out. The clocks were still stuck at 3:18 a.m. when the bank finally sold it. At night, I stood in my bedroom and listened to the distant train, to the echo of humming that wasn't really there. The diner Chloe chose sat just off the highway, a place people passed through without meaning to stay. Vinyl booths, burnt coffee. The smell of grease soaked into everything. She was already there, sitting stiffly, hands wrapped around a mug like it might slip away. She looked like herself, and not at all. Same eyes, same sideways smile. Something in her posture had tightened, pulled inward. Sarah. She stood too fast. We hugged, awkward, careful. They call me something else now, she said as we sat. But that name, it still fits. With you. Her leg bounced under the table. A fork clattered somewhere behind the counter. She flinched. They weren't cruel, she said suddenly, staring into her coffee. Arthur and Martha, I need you to know that. I didn't answer. The silence stretched. He hummed, she went on. All the time, 3 notes. I used to think it was a song later. I realized it was to cover noise, so I wouldn't hear myself. My fingers curled against the vinyl seat. They tucked me in, Sarah. Every night, read me stories. While my real mother was screaming for me in another state, her voice broke, uneven. How do I live with that? The diner hummed around us. A trucker laughed too loud at the counter. Life went on, indifferent. I don't think there's a right way, I said finally. She nodded, like she'd expected that. When we parted, she squeezed my hand. Hard. Don't disappear, she said. Most people do. After that, she called late, quiet. Her voice often came in pieces, sentences breaking off mid-thought. I went back, she said once, to the store. My stomach tightened. It's still there, the sound. It's not just noise, it vibrates, in your bones. I felt sick standing there, like the floor was moving. I imagined it, the endless space, ceiling too high, rows stretching on without landmarks, a place designed to erase time. Sometimes, she said, I think that's why it worked, why I went with him. Everything in there feels unreal, like rules don't apply. After those calls, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. My husband asked if I was okay. I said yes. The word tasted thin. I started ignoring things. Dishes left in the sink, conversations half heard. My phone buzzed, and nothing else mattered. One evening, my husband touched my arm. You're not here, he said gently. I snapped at him, apologized too fast. The look on his face lingered longer than the argument. The last message came on a Tuesday. I think I know why I survived, Chloe wrote, because someone decided I was worth taking. I stared at the screen, my throat tight. That doesn't make it okay, I typed. The dots appeared, vanished. No, she wrote, but it makes it complicated. I thought of Arthur Vance humming in the dark, of stopped clocks, of love twisted into something that could cage you. That night, my husband fell asleep alone. I sat on the couch, phone in my hand, the glow reflecting off the window like a second, dimmer world somewhere. Far away, a freight train sounded its low, endless warning, and I understood, with a clarity that scared me, how a single moment in a place meant to swallow people, whole could keep claiming lives, quietly, patiently. long after everyone thought the story was over. I was 26, the night I returned to my childhood home at 14 Alder Ridge Road, Westfall, Montana, to pack the last of my mother's belongings after her funeral. And from the moment I stepped through the door, I felt something inside the house exhale, like it had been waiting for me to walk back in. The air carried a metallic scent I didn't remember. My mother always burned cinnamon candles this time of year, even when no one came over. But now the place smelled like rusting tools hidden under the floorboards. It clung to the back of my tongue, faint but insistent, the way the taste of blood lingers after biting your lip too hard. The house was colder than it should have been. I nudged the thermostat with my knuckle, but it flickered, then dimmed again. Maybe the power company hadn't fully reset things after the storm last week. I told myself it was fine. Grief had a way of making ordinary glitches feel sinister. In the den, I found boxes stacked in uneven towers, some slumped like they'd been opened and closed too many times. I knelt to sort them, rubbing a hand over my tired eyes. That's when I saw the envelope, yellowed, thin, and addressed in my mother's looping script. "Lena, don't ignore what you've inherited. He'll come for you when I'm gone." My breath stalled. It wasn't the words that scared me. Not at first. It was the shaking in her handwriting, as if she'd been terrified while writing it. Inside, folded neatly, was a brittle family tree. Every branch held names and dates until it reached hers. Where my name should have been, there was a blank line, like someone had erased me, or like she'd added me later. A patch on a branch that didn't belong, I whispered. "Mom, what the hell were you hiding?" My voice sounded small in the empty room. Snow thickened outside until the windows blurred into white smears. That was when someone knocked. 3 slow taps that vibrated through the wooden frame. I felt the sound in my chest more than I heard it. The wind didn't knock, and no one came this far on a night like this. I hesitated before opening the door. No one stood there. Only a Polaroid rested on the top step, its edges damp from snow. My mother holding a baby I didn't recognize. On the back, written with the same trembling hand, "My firstborn." My mouth went dry. I never had siblings. The next morning, I found another Polaroid slipped under the front door. The baby was older in this one, maybe 4 or 5, and behind him stood a tall man. His face blurred in a streaked smudge, as if the film couldn't capture it. My stomach tightened when I noticed the silhouette. Broad shoulders, long arms, a slight forward tilt of the head. He looked like me. I dialed my aunt, my fingers icy. When she picked up, her breath stuttered through the line. "Why didn't anyone tell me?" I demanded. "There was another child." She didn't answer at first. Then, in a cracked whisper, "He wasn't supposed to find you. We changed everything to keep him away, Lena. You weren't taken. You were traded." A cold wave rolled through me. What does that mean? But she hung up. The silence afterward felt heavy, deliberate. That night, the knocking returned, this time above me. A slow, dragging thud echoed from the attic. Dust drifted from the ceiling in soft gray clouds. The metallic scent thickened, sharp enough that it coated my teeth. I tried to ignore it, tried to tell myself grief was twisting reality, but the sound didn't stop. It grew rhythmic, familiar, like someone dragging something heavy across the rafters. Finally, unable to take it, I climbed the attic ladder, my legs trembling. The air tightened the higher I went, as if the space were shrinking around me. At the top, my flashlight beam cut through dust motes that swirled like ash, and I saw footprints, long, bare footprints, spaced too wide for any normal stride, leading toward the far corner. The rocking chair there swayed back and forth, slowly, though the attic had no draft. My skin prickled. A folded note lay on the seat. I forced myself to pick it up. "Your blood remembers me." I felt watched. Studied like someone stood inches behind me, breathing quietly, waiting for me to turn. I ran, down the ladder, through the hallway, out into the snow. I didn't even grab my coat. My breath tore from my lungs as I stumbled toward my car. I told myself I wasn't coming back. Not tonight. Not ever. But before I could unlock the door, my phone buzzed in my pocket. Unknown number, a single photo. Me, standing in the attic. Taken from just behind my shoulder. The room in the picture was empty, but I felt the warmth of someone close behind me, as if the camera had captured something. My eyes weren't allowed to see. I drove away, praying distance would break whatever was reaching for me. But distance didn't matter, because the metallic scent followed. I woke the next morning in my apartment 3 towns over, shivering despite the heater blasting. The metallic smell seeped through the room like invisible smoke. I checked my clothes, nothing. Checked my hair, clean. Checked the vents, just warm air. But the scent settled into my sheets, thick and unpleasantly sweet, like old blood left too long in the open. I hadn't brought anything back from the house. I made sure of it. But the scent clung anyway. By afternoon, I convinced myself sleep deprivation was distorting things. Grief did strange things to the senses. Maybe the photos, the attic, the note, all of it was igniting some psychological echo chamber. But even as I rationalized, my nerves thrummed like they were preparing for impact. Near dusk, a soft tapping reached my ears. I froze. It came from the far end of the apartment. 3 slow taps. My pulse hammered as I crossed the living room. The tapping repeated, patient, as if whoever was doing it knew I would answer eventually. The sound came from the balcony door. I approached cautiously. The curtains swayed slightly in the heater's breeze. When I pulled them back, the entire balcony lay empty beneath the yellow streetlight glow. Snowflakes drifted sideways in the wind. Nothing else moved, but on the glass, a smear appeared. Long vertical, as if someone had dragged a wet fingertip downward. The trail glistened faintly. I wiped it with my sleeve. Metallic scent bloomed instantly. I stumbled back, gagging. The taste crawled down my throat like it wanted to anchor itself inside me. That night, sleep evaded me. Every creak in the building felt deliberate. Every hum of the pipe sounded like a breath drawn just out of sight. I kept replaying my aunt's trembled words. You weren't taken. You were traded. Traded for what? By whom? Why me? Around 3:20 a.m. The tapping returned, not from the balcony. From somewhere inside the apartment, 3 slow taps, followed by silence thick enough to choke on. I dialed my aunt again. She picked up after the 4th ring, voice trembling. Aunt Carol, I whispered. Please, I need the truth. Her inhale shook through the phone. Your mother? She made a deal she didn't understand. She believed she could bargain with something older than us. Something that wanted a child born with its bloodline. She offered her firstborn, but she couldn't go through with it, so she hid him, then hid you. I clutched the bridge of my nose. Why would I matter to him? Because you share his blood, she said, and blood remembers what it's owed. I heard something behind me, a faint scrape, a shifting weight from the hallway. Carol, I whispered, he's here. The line went dead. I turned slowly. The hallway stretched long and dim, each shadow feeling too heavy, too anchored. My breath came fast and shallow, fogging in the cold air. Then I saw them, footprints bare, elongated, trailing from my bedroom toward the living room carpet. They glistened faintly, as though wet. I backed toward the kitchen. The apartment seemed to constrict, walls tightening, ceiling pressing down. I could almost sense him behind me, the same presence from the attic, the same invisible weight in the Polaroid. I grabbed my car keys, forcing myself to move. But as I crossed the living room, the tapping returned, this time inches behind me. 3 slow taps on the floor. I bolted down the stairs, out into the brittle night air, slipping on ice as I ran for my car. My breath felt thick, metallic, like I was breathing in the same scent that clung to everything now. I started the engine and sped through empty streets, carved by plows hours earlier. I didn't stop until I reached the next county. I checked into a roadside motel under a different name. Every instinct screamed that if he could find me at home, he could find me anywhere. But I needed even a temporary illusion of safety. But illusions crumble fast. The room smelled faintly of bleach and old fabric softener. Until it didn't. Within minutes, the metallic scent seeped in. Slow, creeping, familiar. I sank onto the bed, shaking uncontrollably. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. Another photo. This one showed the motel room door, taken from the outside. A second photo arrived, my silhouette sitting on the bed. Taken from the window, a third dark grainy, showing the bathroom door slightly ajar, as if someone stood just inside. My pulse thundered, my vision blurred. Then the final message came. The trade is overdue. I dropped the phone. The metallic scent thickened until it felt physical, pressing against my skin. Outside, through the thin motel walls, I heard it again. 3 slow taps, the same patient rhythm that had followed me from my childhood home. The same reminder that blood, no matter how far it runs, always finds its way back to what it was promised. I was 27 when I stepped onto the sagging porch of 108 Sparrowgate Lane, and the house breathed out a smell I remembered, but could never place: damp wood, old paper, and something metallic, as if time had bled here. I stood with my mother's sealed envelope in one hand, and the new deed in the other, feeling like a trespasser in a life I barely recalled. The autumn light hung low, stretched thin, and in the silence that followed my footsteps, I had the uneasy sense of being watched by something deeper than walls. I pushed open the door, and the house greeted me with a groan that sounded almost resentful. Dust floated in the stillness like slow, moving snow. The living room sat exactly as my childhood memory held it. Brown couch, leaning floor lamp, faded rug, but everything felt too undisturbed, as if someone had pressed pause the day we fled and never came back to unfreeze it. I whispered, "Mom, what were you so afraid of?" But my voice fell flat, swallowed before it reached the hallway. The envelope seal cracked easily, the paper brittle with age. Inside was a single photograph, my parents in this very doorway, smiling stiffly, each holding one side of a little girl. A little girl who wasn't me. On the back, in my mother's careful, looping handwriting, "Our first attempt." My throat tightened. Attempt. The word tasted wrong, clinical. My parents never mentioned another child, no photos, no birthdays. And yet the girl in the picture had my jawline, my hair color, even the same dimple on her left cheek. I tried to draw a line through memory, 9 years old, grabbing my teddy bear as we left in a panic. My mother saying we couldn't stay, that the house was unsafe. But the why had always been missing. Now it felt like the house had been waiting for me to ask. I walked down the hallway, each step stirring the faintest tremor in the floorboards. They answered like someone pacing just out of sight. When I pressed my palm to the wallpaper, cold radiated through it sharply enough to sting. A sound rose from behind the plaster, a whispery hum, like someone breathing through old fabric. I pulled my hand away and told myself houses settle, that memory exaggerates. But the sound lingered. I found the basement door locked, a rusted padlock hanging unevenly. I tugged it once, then again harder. The lock didn't budge. Of course, I muttered, forcing a laugh that didn't quite land. Why make anything easy? As I stepped back, a loose board nudged my foot. Behind it, dust puffed out in a warm, stale wave. I knelt and saw a hidden cubby, cramped and dark. Inside lay tiny dresses folded with impossible care. Children's drawings, all the same hand. Stick figures with circular eyes and crooked smiles. A music box shaped like a bird cage, its brass tarnished green at the edges. When I wound it with hesitant fingers, the tune limped out, off-key and trembling. And under it, clear as breath on my neck, I heard a child whisper, "Don't let them forget me again." I flinched so hard the box slipped from my hands. The melody sputtered. The whisper didn't. Footsteps thundered overhead, small, frantic, running in tight circles across the upstairs landing. Dust drifted from the ceiling beams like shaken snow. My pulse surged. I called out, "Who's there?" But the only response was a faint laugh, thin and close, like it came from just behind my ear. Panic pushed me toward the front door. The knob refused to turn. I rattled it, twisted, yanked, nothing. Then it turned slightly on its own, just enough to click, as if someone on the other side had grasped it. I backed away, breath shaking. A moment later, a fresh photograph slid under the door with a soft scrape. I froze before picking it up. It showed me standing on the staircase inside the house, taken from behind. I had felt no presence, heard no shudder, sensed no one close enough to capture something this intimate and precise. Fight or flight surged, and flight won. I crashed through the nearest side window, glass splintering around me. Cold air slapped my face as I bolted to my car. My hands fumbled the keys, and I nearly sobbed when the engine finally caught. Only when I reached the highway did I glance into the rearview mirror. The birdcage music box sat upright in the back seat, wound, ticking, waiting. I hadn't carried it out. I hadn't touched it, after the whisper. My apartment felt safer in memory than it ever had in reality. But when I stumbled inside hours later, locking everything twice, the air held a new weight, a heaviness that followed me like a small shadow with a long memory. For the first week, I told myself everything had an explanation: an overactive mind, grief twisting old memories, adrenaline distorting the present. But each night, without fail, the music box played from somewhere in the apartment, soft and wandering, like a lullaby sung through cracked teeth. Sometimes the melody came from the kitchen, other nights, the hallway, once from directly beneath my bed. I tried sleeping with the lights on. I tried unplugging every device. I wrapped the music box in towels, zipped it into a suitcase, buried it behind winter coats in the closet. Still, the song found me. Worse, now the footsteps did too. Small, quick, pacing just beyond my sightline. And always at 3:11 a.m., the exact minute my childhood memory faded into black. I started calling my mother's old contacts, desperate for anyone who could explain what first attempt meant. Most numbers were disconnected. A few people hung up the moment I said my mother's name. One woman, her voice shaking, managed, "Honey, you shouldn't open doors your mother nailed shut," before ending the call. By the 10th night, sleep felt impossible. I sat on my couch with a mug of cold coffee, watching shadows dance under the stovelight. My mind kept circling the same questions. Who was the girl? Why had my parents buried her existence? Why did the house feel alive? And why did whatever lived in it follow me? At 3:11 a.m., the music began again. This time louder. I walked into the hallway, heart pounding against my ribs. The tune drifted from the bedroom. "Stop," I whispered. Though I didn't know who I was begging, my fingers trembled as I pushed open the door. The suitcase lay in the center of the floor, unzipped. The towels were removed, folded neatly beside it. The music box sat upright, spinning slowly, and scattered around it were photographs, dozens of me as a child. But not the childhood I remembered. In some photos, I was holding the girl from the original picture. In others, she stood alone, smiling, while I appeared beside her, but blurred, as if I were the one fading. One image made my breath stutter, the two of us at age 6, identical except for her eyes. Darker, empty air, a void pretending to be human. A fresh one rested on the bed. I picked it up with numb fingers. Me today, sitting on this very floor, reaching for this very photo. My knees buckled. I whispered, "What do you want?" But the room answered, with only a soft rhythmic tapping, small feet pattering along the wall behind my headboard. For days I avoided sleep. Every reflective surface felt like a doorway. Every sound felt intentional. My mind frayed at the edges, unraveling thread by thread. I stopped going to work. My phone died and I didn't charge it. I lived in the narrow slice of time between fear and exhaustion. Then, one morning, after a stretch of sleepless darkness, an envelope slid under my apartment door. It was addressed to Mara, but the handwriting wasn't my mother's this time. Inside was a single photograph, me as a child, standing between my parents and the girl who could have been my mirror. "If you drain something vital from me." On the back, 2 messages, one in my mother's familiar script, "One of you had to live," and beneath it, scrawled freshly, in uneven lettering still shiny with wet ink, "I remember you now, Mara." I dropped the photograph. It stuck to my palm, as if clinging. I backed into the hallway and froze. The music box was playing upstairs, except I didn't have an upstairs. Slow creaks spread across the ceiling, measured, and patient small footsteps. Pacing in the attic I didn't have. The sound grew clearer, closer, as if something was peeling itself out of the air between floors. A child's whisper drifted down, warm as breath. "Come play where you left me." I pressed my back to the front door, gripping the knob hard enough to hurt, but something on the other side twisted it in the opposite direction. Soft laughter filled the apartment. Familiar now. I closed my eyes because looking felt dangerous. The last thing I heard before the lights flickered out was the voice, inches from my ear. "Only one of us gets to keep this life." And then the footsteps began descending the invisible stairs toward me, each one slow, deliberate, and impossibly certain, like she already knew which of us deserved to stay. I was 28, The winter morning I stepped into 412 Marl Pines Road and felt the air press against my skin, like the house was trying to inhale me. The cold outside hadn't bothered me at all, but the moment the front door groaned shut behind me, an oppressive warmth settled into my bones. A thick, stale heat that felt strangely aware of me. I remember standing there for a moment, snow melting off my boots, listening to the quiet, too quiet. Even dust motes seemed to hang motionless in the air, suspended as if the entire place had paused mid-breath. My grandmother's house hadn't changed since the single visit I barely remembered. Wallpaper yellowed like old teeth, furniture lined precisely as though measured, the faint scent of lavender sachets mixed with mold drifting from corners. My mother never let me come back here. Some homes remember their mistakes, she used to say, with a tone that suggested the home was not the only thing guilty. I walked deeper into the hallway, running a gloved finger over a row of framed photographs, all perfectly centered, but none of them showed me. Not as a child, not with my mother, not with anyone who resembled us. Instead, faces I didn't recognize stared back, stern women, grim children, a line of people who looked vaguely alike but felt unrelated to any memory I owned. I tried focusing on the task, settle the estate, sign probate paperwork, pack the things worth salvaging, and leave before the early sunset iced over the road. My mind, though, kept circling the unease clinging to the walls, as if the house was evaluating me. Approving or disapproving, I couldn't tell. Upstairs the air thinned. I opened each door slowly, announcing myself out of some strange instinct. Just me, just checking boxes. My voice sounded too loud, like I was interrupting someone. In the hallway closet, beneath folded linens that smelled faintly of detergent and decay, a floorboard shifted when I stepped on it. Not a normal hollow creak. Something closer to a groan, like pressure forcing wood to move. I knelt down, prying up the corner of the board using a loose nail. Beneath it sat a wax paper bundle, brittle and yellowed. I unwrapped it with careful fingers. Inside was a document titled, "The First Will of Agnes Linden." The date was impossibly old, well before my mother's birth. Yet the ink appeared too dark, too fresh. My pulse climbed as I read the beneficiary clause, to Clara Linden. My second granddaughter, my exact name, but I was her only granddaughter. A faint tapping echoed from downstairs, not like pipes or settling wood, more deliberate. I followed the sound to the living room, where a rotary phone rested on a lace doily. It had no cord, no connection to anything. Yet, as I approached, the phone rang again, short, piercing, impatient. I lifted the receiver with trembling fingers. "Clara," a woman whispered, voice papery fragile. "They hid you from me," static burst in my ear. Then, another voice won. I recognized instantly from old videos of her birthday speeches. My grandmother. "Don't trust the one who calls herself mother." I dropped the receiver, heart pounding so hard it felt like it might shake the floorboards open on its own. I called my mother on video. She answered instantly, breathless. "Clara, are you okay? I found a will. It says I'm her second granddaughter." And there were voices on. Her eyes widened in terror. "Clara, get out of that house now. What's happening?" "If the floorboards opened for you," she whispered, glancing off. "Screen as if someone stood just beyond view. It means she's awake." A heavy creak sounded above me. I turned slowly, staring at the ceiling as another footstep came. Slow, dragging, uneven. The sound of someone rediscovering muscles long unused. "Mom," I breathed. "Simona's upstairs." "Leave," she begged. "Please." But something in the house shifted, an old, unseen mechanism locking into place. The air thickened again, lavender curling around me with a sweetness that nearly masked the rot beneath it. A shadow stretched down the stairs, impossibly long, elongating before any figure appeared. I backed away into the dining room, knocking over a box. Papers spilled out, loose envelopes, some torn open, each in my grandmother's frantic handwriting. They switched the children. One was chosen, one was erased. Clara is not the one you think. A violent crack sounded above, the attic door slamming open. My body moved before thought could catch up. I bolted for the back door, slipping on the icy porch steps and charging into the trees until the house shrank behind a wall of dark pines. When I finally reached my car, lungs burning, I checked my phone. One new message. A photograph. Me standing in the living room minutes earlier, but in the photo, a woman stood behind me, her hand resting gently on my shoulder. Her face older, but unmistakably mine. For a long moment, I couldn't breathe. The woman's face in the photograph. Older, yes, but shaped from the same bone structure as mine, stared at the camera with an expression that could only be described as possessive satisfaction, as though she hadn't just found me, but reclaimed me. I wanted to believe it was a trick of the light, a glitch, someone using a filter to make a stranger look related. But the eyes, they were mine, but darker, sharper, knowing in a way I didn't yet understand. Snow fell in heavy clumps against the windshield as I backed out of the driveway. My hands were shaking so badly, the keys nearly slipped from my grip. I kept glancing at the rearview mirror, half expecting her to suddenly appear in the back seat. The scent of lavender lingered in my coat, so strong it clung to my tongue. I made it to the nearest hotel in Elmridge, an aging roadside place with humming neon lights and a front desk clerk who barely looked up as I checked in. When I reached my room, I locked the door, pushed a chair against it, then stood in the middle of the carpeted floor, unable to move. Everything inside me buzzed with a kind of panic that doesn't let you collapse, because it keeps whispering that falling asleep will make you pray. I spread the photo on the bed. Up close, something else emerged. Details I'd missed before. Behind my older double, the wallpaper in the picture was peeling in a different pattern than it had minutes earlier when I stood in that same spot. The photo wasn't taken with me in the room. It was taken in a room that remembered itself differently. My phone buzzed again. A text from my mother, Clara. "Answer me. Where are you, please?" I hesitated before calling. When she picked up, her voice shook as though she'd been waiting without exhaling. "Mom," I whispered. What did she mean? They switched the children. Who is the other Clara? Her silence was a small, agonizing eternity. Then, "I never wanted you to know. Your grandmother. She didn't want one heir. She wanted two. A pair. One to raise, one to keep for herself." The words tightened something deep in my chest. "Mom, that doesn't make sense." I was her only no, she cut in. Voice breaking. "No, you weren't." The heating unit in the hotel room clicked loudly, then began blowing cold air, despite the thermostat reading nearly 90 degrees. "I don't understand," I said, rubbing my forehead, trying to force my brain to stay organized. "If there were two of us, then where's the other?" "She died," my mother whispered. "Or that's what we thought. We left that house to save you. We stole you away before your grandmother could choose between you. Agnes called it the culling. I called it insanity." Lavender rolled through the room then. So sudden, so thick, I gagged. The curtains fluttered even though the window was latched. "Mom," I whispered, "she's here." "Don't look in any mirrors," she said frantically. "Don't let her match your reflection. That's how she..." Her voice cut out, replaced by static. Then faintly, another voice crawled through the line. "Second granddaughter." I dropped the phone on the bed and backed toward the bathroom, thinking I just needed water. A splash on my face, something grounding. But halfway there, I froze. The bathroom light flickered under the door, a soft, pulsing glow like someone was pacing just inside. No, I wasn't going in there. I grabbed my bag, shoved the photo inside, and unlocked the hotel door. But the hallway had changed. The patterned carpet was the same, but the walls had turned the faded rose-colored wallpaper from my grandmother's house, and the lavender smell was suffocating now. "Clara," the voice came softly from the far end of the hall. I knew that voice, not because it had spoken aloud before, but because hearing it felt like recognizing a memory I never lived. A silhouette stepped into view. A woman, my age or older, hard to tell from the distance. She moved with a slow grace, her hand dragging along the wall, like she was steadying herself after a long sleep. I ran. The hallway stretched, bending into a shape the hotel had never been built for. Doors warped, becoming the tall, narrow doors from Morrow Pines Road. The lights flickered, strobing the corridor into a series of still images. The woman a step closer, then another, then impossibly near. I shoved myself into the stairwell and flew down the steps until the exit door burst open into the freezing night. I didn't stop running until I reached the edge of the parking lot, lungs tearing from cold air. Behind me, One of the hotel windows glowed with a soft lavender, colored light. I drove without thinking. Hours blurred. Towns passed as snow thickened across the highway. Only once I reached my apartment in Tacoma did the buzzing in my head begin to settle. I showered. I changed clothes. I tried to convince myself I was safe. But the moment I turned off the bathroom light, two reflections lingered for a heartbeat too long. Mine and hers. The lavender scent drifted from my vents at midnight, and this morning, an envelope lay at my door. To Clara Linden, my rightful granddaughter. I was 29 when I agreed to help my aunt clear out Hillcrest End Home, 603 Lanternwood Road, Brookdale, Oregon. And from the first step over the threshold, I felt something in that house was already aware of me. The air was colder than it should have been for a late autumn afternoon, heavy in a way that pressed against my ribs. Even the dust seemed unnaturally arranged, not random, but patterned, as though someone had swept only the spots they wanted me to step on. My aunt, Mary Ann, moved briskly ahead through the foyer, pretending not to notice the way the floorboards creaked under her with a long, reluctant groan. But I noticed everything: the faint chemical sweetness beneath the scent of wood rot, the tightness in her shoulders, the way the house felt like it was holding its breath, as if waiting to exhale until we were deep inside its walls. I tried to shake the feeling. This was just a favor. Family obligation. A weekend of sorting boxes so the property could finally be sold. But the family tree in the parlor stopped me cold. Its cracked glass reflected my own face back at me. My name, Emily, clean and precise beneath my parents'. But the branch under my mother's name had been snapped off. Not removed, broken. The jagged tear in the wood looked violently fresh, like someone had done it recently and with purpose. "Hey, this is weird," I said, pointing toward it. Mary Ann barely glanced. "We don't keep unfinished things on display," she said quickly, too quickly, and hurried out of the room. Her eyes hadn't met mine once. By evening, the house's chill had become an ache in my joints. While sorting boxes upstairs, I stumbled upon a stack of journals tied with brittle twine. My grandmother's handwriting slanted across the top one, for the one who was left behind. The phrase lodged in my throat. I opened the first entry. At first, the words didn't make sense. Rambling notes, dated decades apart, all referencing a daughter born minutes before my mother, a daughter given away at birth, a daughter claimed by someone else. My breath thinned. A twin. My mother had a twin. My grandmother had written of her, as if she were something that grew silently in the dark places of the family, and threatened to break through. I found Mary Ann gripping the upstairs banister, her eyes fixed on some invisible point beyond me. "Why didn't anyone tell me Mom had a sister?" I asked. Her hand tightened hard enough to whiten her knuckles. "Don't," she whispered. "Don't ask about her. Some parts of the family, they grew in the dark. Your mother tried to prune the branch, but it kept growing back." Her voice shook on the last word. I wanted to push her, to demand answers, but a cold draft moved between us, and she flinched like the house had spoken first. I didn't sleep, not that night. The floor above me creaked with long, deliberate footfalls, too slow to be pipes settling. A faint lullaby drifted through the ductwork, a soft, tinkling melody, like a music box winding itself backward. Over and over, I followed the sound down the hall and found myself in the old nursery no one had used in decades. The rocking chair moved gently, creaking with a slow rhythm, as if someone invisible sat there, rocking with infinite patience. On the floor was a Polaroid, a woman who looked exactly like me. Same eyes, same tilt of the chin, but older. Her smile was pulled too wide, the corners stretching as if something inside her wanted out. On the back, in smeared ink, "The first daughter never forgets." I felt something shift inside me, fear cracking open like a fault line. My shadow on the floor lengthened unnaturally, stretching until the fingers looked too long, too thin. And then a second shadow appeared beside mine. I didn't breathe, didn't blink. The second shadow's head tilted just like mine, but I hadn't moved at all. I bolted, glass cutting my palms as I smashed the nearest window and leapt into the yard. I heard the lullaby behind me, quieter now, like it was retreating only because it knew it didn't have to chase. By the time police arrived, the journals were gone, completely gone. The family tree lay shattered on the floor, names crossed out, rearranged with fresh ink that hadn't been there hours earlier. Mary Ann insisted we must have broken it ourselves. Her voice was too calm, her face too pale. I didn't argue, I just left. The next morning, a thin white envelope rested at my apartment door. No return address. Inside was a Polaroid of me sleeping, my hair spread across my pillow, my face relaxed. I would have believed it was a selfie taken while half asleep. Except I hadn't taken it, and except for the figure in the photo beside me, a woman with my face, my eyes, my mouth. Her head resting on my pillow as though she lived there, as though she belonged there. On the back, the missing branch has grown back. Make room. Part 2. 750 words. I didn't remember coming inside the apartment the night before. My coat was draped neatly on the hook, my boots arranged side by side, and the lights were dimmed to the soft setting I only used when I read before bed. But I hadn't been reading. I'd spent the night clutching a steering wheel, driving in circles around town, until the sky cracked with the first pale streaks of dawn. Yet, the apartment felt used, lived in, by someone who'd done the things I was too shaken to remember. I locked the door with trembling fingers. Every sound inside the apartment took on sharp edges. The refrigerator hum deepened, until it sounded like a low growl. The ticking of the wall clock stalled, resumed, then stalled again. The heater vent coughed out a single warm breath, as if clearing its throat. I kept replaying the Polaroid in my mind, the woman with my face, lying beside me like she had every right to be there. I checked my bedroom. The sheets were cool, untouched. I stripped the bed, checking the seams, the frame, the underside of the box spring. Nothing. No sign of anyone but me. Still, the air felt different, heavy, claimed. The apartment's narrow hallway was lined with framed photos. My childhood birthdays, college graduation, last year's trip to Denver. When I brushed past them, I froze. Something was off. In the picture from my 6th birthday, my father's hand rested on my shoulder, but the angle of his hand had changed. Instead of lying flat, his fingers curled, slightly gripping my shirt. I blinked hard, leaning in. The photo grain shifted faintly, like it was still settling. "That's not real," I whispered to myself. "You're just tired." But a memory surfaced then, uninvited. My mother brushing my hair when I was small, murmuring, "You were meant to be alone, sweetheart. Some children should never meet their mirrors." I had never understood what she meant. I'd assumed she was talking about cousins I never met. But what if a soft tapping interrupted my thoughts? 3 gentle taps on the hallway wall. Not the door, the wall. I pressed my palm flat against the cool paint, holding my breath. Another tap directly opposite my hand. Like someone tapping back, my fingers recoiled. I tried to steady myself. I wasn't a frightened child. I wasn't losing my mind. There had to be a logical explanation. Stress, hallucination, exhaustion, anything, but the idea forming at the edges of my thoughts. The missing twin, raised in the dark by someone who believed she belonged elsewhere. A sister who looked like me. A sister who felt entitled to return. A sister who apparently had never stopped watching. I moved from room to room, turning on every light. The brightness helped only a little. Shadows still pooled under the furniture, too dark for midday. I sat on the couch with the Polaroid, studying the edges. Something about the figure beside me unnerved me more than her resemblance. Her body was angled toward mine, head tilted with unsettling tenderness. As if she had been whispering into my sleeping ear. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Just one sentence. "You slept so peacefully." The phone slipped from my hand, clattering to the hardwood. My breath stuttered. I typed back with shaking fingers. "Who is this?" The response came instantly. "Your other half." My vision tunneled. The apartment walls seemed to narrow, bending inward as though reacting to the text. The tapping resumed, this time from inside the bedroom. A slow, rhythmic knock on the back of my closet door. I backed away, pulse hammering. The door creaked open by itself, inch by inch, revealing hanging clothes swaying gently. Though there was no draft, a voice, my voice, whispered from the dark. "I've been here longer than you think." I stumbled toward the front door, fumbling with the lock, desperate to leave. But a second breath exhaled behind me, warm, close, too close. I froze. 2 sets of breathing filled the apartment, mine fast and shallow, the other slow and steady, as if it were savoring the moment. I ran, bolted down the stairs, out into the raw air. I didn't know where I was going, just away. But as I reached the parking lot, I caught sight of a figure in the reflection of a car window. A woman standing behind me, my height, my posture, my face. Smiling that too, wide smile I'd seen in the Polaroid. When I spun around, there was no one there. I don't remember getting back inside. I don't remember locking the door. The apartment is quiet now, too quiet. The kind of quiet that listens. But I know I'm not alone. I can feel her in the walls, in the mirrors, in the air when I breathe. And as I write this, I hear it again. 2 sets of breathing. One of them is mine. The other is waiting for me to fall asleep.